Test 1 2, test 1 2.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Springford Board of School Directors believes the community has the right to bring before the board issues and concerns they may have about items on the agenda or about items in general which affect the district or their children. Because of this belief and philosophy, the board will schedule a time at the beginning and conclusion of every meeting to have an opportunity for community members to share their concerns with the board. At the start of the meeting, members from the public may comment on agenda items only. The school board will move through the meeting agenda, then at the end, when prompted, there will be a time for public comment. This meeting is being filmed to be broadcast on community cable channels and online. Individuals attending to make public comment should be aware that they are being videotaped. Speakers will be asked to state their name and address before making their comment.
All right, welcome to the January 24th, 2022 Springford Area School District Board meeting. A couple of announcements this morning before we begin. Ms. Sullivan is not here today, so one of our board members is not with us. And Mrs. Smith, who is our school nurse, is on Zoom, available for any questions. This week on Wednesday, was it? We had the President's Council meeting on Zoom. It was for the home and school presidents and the Booster Club, SNAP, Music Association were all invited to share what activities they are doing and to share ideas. It was a really great meeting there. Several of our board members attended also, and several of our administrators were there as well. Also, I'd like to thank the leadership team prior to our board meeting today. They welcomed us to get together and have some gifts and to thank us for the board appreciation. So I'd like to thank the leadership team for that. It was very nice. So going further, if there's no other comments about that, Mrs. Zasowski, you were at the President's Council meeting. Did you want to talk about anything that went on there or add to anything that I said?
Well, I just want to say that it was very well attended, as often that meeting is. I was glad to see that it's going to continue under Dr. Wright's leadership, and I did pass the baton to her. We also did learn about what each of the home and schools are doing, what SNAP is doing, and in particular what the Booster Club is going to be rolling out over the next few weeks, which will be a Ram Country project. So I ask you all to watch for further details. I don't want to spill the beans, but it is an exciting project that is going on, and I think the community will benefit from the addition of that project. Right. And we'll meet again in April. I believe the meeting has already been set for April 20th.
Yes. Thank you. And I know one of the things that we did enjoy very much hearing is the different activities that the home and schools are doing. And we had talked about, Mr. Rizzo, really a way that if any opportunity to bring before the board or share some of those fundraisers or activities, the way the home and school looks to provide a great culture for their students, that we'd love to hear more here because they're doing a lot. So thank you very much for that. So just a couple of remarks also before we move in to the next step is that masks are required this evening while in our buildings, and that each community member on Zoom and in person will have, when we have public comment, we'll have up to 3 minutes in which to address the board. To please note, as in the past, we will do our best to bounce comments from those in person and those on Zoom, and that I respectfully request that those individuals in attendance this evening are respectful, courteous, and civil during public comment and throughout the meeting. So, so we are ready, unless there's anything else that you'd like to add, Mr. Rizzo, at this time?
No, we're good. Let's go.
Okay, then we are ready for the public to be heard on agenda items only. So is there anyone in the room that would like to approach the podium? You may go ahead. First name, last name, please, and your address. Thank you. Whatever it is. So we can't hear you. Hold on just a moment.
Is that better? All right, let's start over. Good evening. My name is Dr. Imran Ahmed. I'm a resident of 75 Gold Finch Circle in Phoenixville. First of all, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Muslim community. Agenda number 10. Me and my wife, we have 3 children. 2 of that are alumni of Springford Area School District and have 1 child in 6th grade. Firstly, once again, I would like to thank Springford preparing my 2 elder children for college. As discussed last week, Eid holidays are 2 lunar calendar holidays that signify our Muslim day of celebration. Just like many religions have holidays during the Springford calendar year, it will only be fair to the Muslim community kids that attend Springford to add their holidays as well. Eid celebrations are where Muslim families come together, go to the mosque together, give charity together, exchange gifts, meet friends, and eat together, just to name a few important festivities. When we look around us, we see so many wonderful and beautiful kids growing and prospering. It is not only due to their parents' efforts, but also the efforts of the entire school community, in which we have the board members, principals, teachers, and guidance counselors, all who work endlessly to make sure that every kid succeeds, because these kids are our future. Kids need to learn about their culture, their heritage, and learn to value the religious beliefs and family values. It becomes unfair to a child who is in the 1st grade or beyond in other grades when they must request a day off in order to be part of the celebration, which they have waited for all year long. As we look all around, other school districts all over our nation, which is of course the United States, and even in Pennsylvania, we see that schools are increasingly adopting Eid into their holiday schedule. So we will, on behalf of our Muslim community, appreciate if our request is fulfilled and voted in a manner so our kids do not have to spend the day of Eid reviewing for a test or completing homework assignments, or biggest of all, coming to school, but instead can enjoy and appreciate their holiday. Thank you, and hopefully this school district can help keep flourishing and having kids from our different regions of the world succeed in a manner where society
Thank you.
prospers
We've
and
hit-
will continue
we've
to
hit
say,
3 minutes. Thank you.
Go Rams. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else
Thank you.
in the audience here? May go ahead and approach the podium. Your name, address, and the agenda item to which you'll be addressing.
Hi, I'm Steve Fry, Royersford, PA. I'd like to talk about agenda item 2A. As anyone who's kept aware of the EDI programs in different organizations knows their reputation, the good and the bad, and knows some of the warning signs of the bad. I submitted several right-to-know requests to obtain EDI materials from the school and invest time in reading them. I've seen many indications of the bad, and I've shared some of those with the board in hopes to avoid them. So at a committee meeting earlier this month, I asked a few questions. Would there be an opening of the EDI presentation to questions from the public during the presentation? The answer was no. How are they determining what questions the public may have regarding the EDI presentation, if they're going to ask for those in advance? The answer was, I didn't hear any answer saying that they were going to do that. And would the presentation be posted for public review in advance of the meeting? I didn't see that it was. So I'm hopeful that the involvement of a parents group in the EDI team will mean that there's a more meaningful presentation tonight with a lot more useful information than what we've seen in the past. However, with some of the more questionable history of EDI projects, I would expect a much more proactive and interactive engagement than what I've seen so far. One expectation set out in Board Policy 004 as part of the Board Code of Ethics is this: my fellow board members and I must take the initiative in helping all the people of this community to have all the facts all the time about their schools. And I think the success of today's EDI presentation should be measured based on the achievement of that commitment. After 2.5 years of an EDI initiative, 1.5 years of an EDI policy, and 3 board presentations, I'm hoping after tonight's presentation, we will leave with a feeling that we have all the facts about this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please give your name, address, and the agenda item to which you will be referring. Thank you.
Megan Nice, North Limerick Road, Schwenksville, speaking on agenda item 2A. I encourage the board to require total transparency about what action items are being taken by the EDI team. We all know this is a hot topic item, and I'm all for meeting the needs of all students. It's certainly important for students to feel safe, respected, and heard. I look forward to what the representatives here tonight have to say. For the sake of time, I'd like to look specifically at the following statement in the EDI policy manual. Under guidelines, it states, and I quote, "Special attention will be given to ensure that racial and ethnic diversity is a primary consideration in the district. Racial and ethnic diversity as well as cultural responsiveness shall be considered when staffing individual schools as well as staffing patterns within the district." Quote. What does that mean specifically? Please require clarification. We are currently short-staffed as teachers. Are qualified applicants being turned away because they don't meet a certain racially diverse profile? And what is that profile exactly? There are 22 resignations listed on tonight's agenda, and I'm concerned about the lens in which the district is looking at new prospects. Is the hiring process now based on a racial quota? If so, is the EDI team responsible for this metric? I strongly urge the board to ask for clarification and total transparency. I certainly hope qualified applicants aren't turned away because they don't fit the pattern. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak tonight? Thank you. Please give your name, address, and the agenda item to which you will be referring.
Hello, Springford board members and respected audience. My name is Ikra Imran, and I live in Phoenixville, PA 19460. I would like to speak regarding agenda number 10. I'm a recent alumni of Springford as I just graduated in 2020. As this current student now in college, I feel as if I am compelled to bring the importance of having the day of Eid off to your attention. I was a student of the Springford Area School District for a majority of my previous academic career, and all throughout I found myself in a situation in which Eid consisted of me rushing my parents back home after the Eid prayers because I had work to do for the classes that I'd be missing that day. Having to have a conscious awareness of being responsible to finish assignments amidst trying to enjoy Eid was truly a nightmare. Therefore, I, as a young Muslim individual, feel as if it is important to be able to enjoy Eid without having to feel worried or stressed about having to rush to complete my assignments. Eid is a day of happiness and gathering, a day in which you appreciate everything you have together with your friends and family. And so the last thing I'd want to spend my Eid doing is worrying about a test that I might have the next day. Therefore, I believe that the Springford area should provide its students a day off for Eid. This way, others can become familiar with our religious holidays, and we do not have to stress to get work done on our day of happiness. I would like to thank Springford for allowing me and everyone else to speak, and thank you. Go Rams.
Thank you. Please give your name, address, and the agenda item to which you're referring. Thank you.
Good evening, board members and everyone else present here tonight. My name is Maryam Amir, and I'm a resident of 110 Spruce Lane, Collegeville, Pennsylvania 19426. Today, I'm here for agenda number 10 to add Muslim holidays of Eid on the district calendar, which was put on table for consideration in front of the board members last week. Before I proceed, I would like to thank all of you on the behalf of my entire community for listening to us and understanding the importance of Eid to us, as well as the Eid holidays. We would also like to thank all of you for taking your time out to read our emails and replying them as well, that too with such positive and affirming replies. I moved here in 2019, and among several other reasons to move here, one was the fact that this district is very inclusive and diverse, and believe me, to date, there are several times when I experienced it myself as well. The inclusion of Eid in the district calendar will be one such proud moment for us. It will give more awareness and a sense of tolerance to the kids of other religion towards their fellow Muslim students, and will make our Muslim kids a little more comfortable and will give them a feeling of being known and understood rather than feeling like a fish out of water. Our kids will enjoy their religious holiday, that is Eid, like the kids of other religions do, freely, happily, without any stress of missing a day of a school or some important test or lecture, without being worried about making up for the homework that they missed or having to worry about many other things that they usually have to do. We are hoping and positive that we will be getting most of the votes and positive responses, and tonight will be the night when we will be hearing this great news of Eid being included as a holiday in the district calendar. Thank you so much once again for being able to successfully provide a safe and inclusive environment for all of our kids, who in future will turn into a compassionate and considerate being, because this is what they were taught when they were young. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Please state your name, your address, and the agenda item to which you'll be referring.
Can you move it a little down? Go ahead. Come on, buddy. Take a step back. Oh, thank you. You're welcome. Thank you so much. He's taking a step on it. There you go. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Isa Amir. I am a student at Oaks Elementary. I live at 110 Spruce Lane, Collegeville 19426. I will be very happy if Eid will be added to the school calendar. This way I will enjoy Eid a lot without worrying about my schoolwork. My brother, sister, and my Muslim friends and non-Muslim friends will all be happy. I'm requesting you all to add Eid as a holiday. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here present today who would like to speak on agenda items? Okay, on Zoom, Aaron, do we have anyone there?
At this time, there's no public comments to be heard on Zoom.
All right, if there are no more comments at this time, I'd like to move on to our presentations. We have two presentations tonight. The first one is Ms. Elizabeth Lease and Mrs. Linda Valor, a presentation on equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak before the school board this evening. The vision of the Spring-Ford Area School District is to be the district that every parent would choose as their child's educational provider. The school board, district administration, teachers, and staff have worked together over the past 10 years, and the district has gained state and national recognition in academics, sports, and fine arts. Our programs for students with special needs and students who are English language learners are highly regarded in the area. As a result of these efforts and recognition, parents are choosing Spring-Ford to be their child's educational provider and are moving into the district for the opportunities our district will provide for their children. We welcome our new students and families to the district. They bring with them diverse backgrounds, experiences, and cultures that enhance the district. The Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee seeks to facilitate the district's ongoing efforts to promote an inclusive environment that celebrates this diversity, to prepare our students to become members of a global community and increase staff awareness of differences within the school community. In our presentation this evening, you will note that our focus is not on curriculum, but rather professional development, expanding opportunities for our students, recruitment and retention efforts, and digging deeper into data. We kindly ask that you hold your questions until the end of the presentation. I would now like to introduce Ms. Linda Valor, Senior High English teacher and Chair of the EDI Committee.
Good evening. Before we start with the presentation, we wanted to start by defining some terms, right? So we want to make sure that we have transparency. We want to make sure that there's a common understanding of the terms that we're using throughout this presentation. So we're going to start with the idea of inclusive excellence because we are going to be presenting the Inclusive Excellence Plan. So inclusive excellence is working with intention to foster and maintain a learning and working environment where all individuals feel a sense of belonging. So that means regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, ability, country of origin, religion, socioeconomic status, or any group with which one identifies. To be specific, here at Spring-Ford, we believe that inclusive excellence is a collaborative, continuous process bringing together students, staff, teachers, administrators, parents, and the community in the work of embedding diversity and inclusiveness throughout the district. I wanted to remind everyone, and I'm sure that there will be questions after, but if we could just keep the questions until we're completed with the entire presentation. We want to make sure that we value your time. We don't want to repeat any information. And we're hoping that some of the questions get answered as we go through each slide. So we would like to first present the Inclusive Excellence Plan. And this is from the consultant that we have, Carlos Wiley. These are his recommendations. So there are 4 major goals that he focused on based on his time here in the district and meeting with staff, meeting with students, and even meeting with some parents from the parent subcommittee. So goal 1 is to focus on student learning and social development. And before we continue, I want to just point to the bottom of the slide where there is a definition for social development, which is the gradual acquisition of certain skills, attitudes, relationships, and behavior that enable the individual to interact with others and to function as a member of society. So objective 1 is to have a better use of student data to address student learning needs, and objective 2 would be to provide opportunities for all students to engage in activities which lead to greater cultural awareness. Goal 2 from our consultant recommendation would be to achieve a more diverse and culturally representative staff. And the objective would be then to increase recruitment strategies that attract diverse groups when hiring new staff for the district. Goal 3, based on our consultant recommendation for his Inclusive Excellence Plan for here at Spring-Ford, would be inclusive excellence training for teachers, support staff, and administrators. So there are 2 objectives up there, and again, our definition for inclusive excellence is at the bottom of the slide. So objective 1 is to offer inclusive excellence training, development, and strategies to teachers, support staff, administrators, students, and eventually the community. And objective 2 would be to offer learning strategies, opportunities for staff to achieve inclusion of learning goals. Our 4th goal, based on the consultant recommendation, is to create an open and inclusive district community that values worth of all students and staff. And again, these are kind of those terms that we tend to use, and we want to make sure that everybody understands what we're inferring from these terms. And so the inclusive community considers the full range of human diversity with respect to ability, language, culture, gender, age, and other forms of human difference. So there are 2 objectives under this goal. The first would be to engage in ongoing and continuous assessment of the district climate, culture, and community. And objective 2 would be to create an open and affirming community that is supportive, respectful, and values differing perspectives and experiences. So that was our consultant's recommendations. Now I'm going to introduce the action plans based on the consultant recommendation, and the EDI committee used the recommended goals to create an action plan specific for the Spring-Ford community. I do think it's really important at this point to make sure we all understand that when it comes to the action plan, we did not just use the consultant recommendations. We also used our own experiences, conversations that we had within committee, subcommittees, and that would also be including the parent subcommittee with that. This action plan has also been shared out with administrators and appropriate administrators at each building and grade level, as they will be playing key roles in rolling out this action plan. Okay, so action plan 1, again, goal 1 of Inclusive Excellence Plan. And it was to focus on student learning and social development. So the objective is to have better use of student data to address student learning needs. Our deliverables would be objective data to help drive decision making, and our measurables would be optional surveys, reports from Skyward, reports from Future Ready PA Index, and student reports. Okay, so here are the action steps for us to achieve or to make progress, if we want to say that, in terms of goal 1. So our action steps would be to have a deep dive into the available data. So disaggregate data by gender, race, and students with special needs. And we're looking to have pretty much a 5-year look back with that data. We'd also like to develop database to better track student discipline to include infractions and discipline incurred for the purpose of determining fairness in discipline application going forward. And data would be disaggregated by gender, race, again, and students with special needs. And then lastly, to identify and prioritize areas of need based upon data review, and to then develop further plans of action to address needs. So our action plan for goal 2, which again is to achieve a more diverse and culturally representative staff, our main objective would be to increase recruitment strategies that would attract diverse groups when hiring new staff. And our deliverables for that would be to increase strategies to recruit and retain staff that are reflective of our student population. So our measurables would be greater recruitment of diverse applicants, recruit and hire employees who demonstrate cultural awareness during the interview process, and to improve retention of diverse employees through networking and or mentorship. And I want to point out that we have a definition for cultural awareness up there because I know many of you may be wondering what that really means. And again, we're trying to be as transparent as possible to make sure that the community, first and foremost, has a common understanding of what we're trying to work for. So for cultural awareness, we mean a person's understanding of the differences between themselves and people from other countries or other backgrounds, especially differences in attitudes and values. And again, it's the awareness that those differences exist. So this slide is to show the student staff demographic by race and ethnicity. So I'll give you a few seconds there to go ahead and look at the race and ethnicity breakdown. I'm hoping it's clear enough for everyone back there. Okay, one of the reasons that we showed that was because, again, we want to make sure that there is cultural representation, right? And cultural representation is incredibly important. Students will often feel seen and validated when they see teachers who look like them, talk like them, you know, have similarities, right? There's something there, okay, to that. And so that's why I wanted to make sure that we had the student and staff demographic up there. And again, that's only one piece of an identity, but that's something that is presentable, right, that we can see is visible. So the action steps for goal 2 of our Inclusive Excellence Plan is to expand or develop relationships with colleges and universities that have historically underrepresented populations to really create a pipeline of student teachers. The second would be to work with the Future Planning Center, which is an amazing resource at the high school, to build an internal pipeline to encourage students to enter the teaching profession. And then thirdly is to develop an employee satisfaction survey and implement support and or professional development based upon results of that survey. We want to be more visible in schools to gather employee feedback and then to build and or expand upon existing mentorship programs for staff. Okay, so I wanted to pause before we get into goal 3, okay, and I'm just going to share an account from a current high school student. So I think that student voice is incredibly important. I'm a teacher, and so obviously that's where my heart is. And I've been with the district since 2008, okay? And, you know, in being a teacher, you get to build relationships with students. That's one of the benefits of that. It's a value of what we get to do. And over time, students get comfortable with sharing about their experiences and concerns. And so I'm just going to share one written account. This in no way represents all of the concerns that are brought. This one in particular I'm sharing out because the student specifically asked me to share it with the community and the board. Hello, I'm writing this to express my concerns about the discrimination and bullying in this school. I'm not sure who to go to with these worries anymore, and I'm sorry if this is the wrong person to direct concerns to. I will clarify. I am a white female in a straight relationship, but I have friends of many skin colors, genders, and sexualities. It would be an understatement to say that bullying is simply bad. The slanders, slurs, and general hate that I see thrown around is vile. I've had friends hurt so badly that they needed to leave class and sob in the bathroom. They don't feel safe to express themselves, and they don't even feel safe to present themselves as a gender. I barely feel safe to hang around these people as the hate is that toxic and stifling. Here's things I just experienced today. If this hurts me, could you imagine how horrendous and inhumane this must be for the targeted peers? I have heard throughout the hallways and have been called the F slur, derogatory term for general gay people, the D slur, derogatory term for lesbians, the T slur, derogatory term for transgender people, and I've seen and heard deliberate misgendering. Even if these students were not aware that these terms were extraordinarily offensive, they have been using them in a negative context. I have been barked at, whistled at, and yelled at by, once again, my very own peers. I am appalled at the teachers. I've looked teachers directly in the eyes as they witness my peers be harassed and have done nothing about it. Nothing is more disheartening than watching a teacher, a staff member, turn their back on a situation that clearly needs them and children that need help. Reaching out further for these children can be hard and fearful as even their lives have become political matters. That brings me to today, and this will date, I'm sure when you hear what I'm going to reference, that it was during Spirit Week in October. I don't know how or why USA Day has managed to translate to Express and Fight About Political Values Day. Why did we keep this day in Spirit Week? Even when my sister was in school, it was known for being the most controversial day of the week. It no longer matters what the point of this day was. It's being used as an excuse to openly spread hate on either side of the political spectrum. We can no longer unite as a country, let alone a school. The very core of Spirit Week was to show school pride and to come together for a fun week before homecoming. The day has pitted kids against each other. I am begging for just a few central changes. Please make the consequences harder on those who bully their peers due to gender, sexuality, race, religion, political stance, etc. Please replace or alter USA Day. Maybe enforce a strict no politics rule. No political flags, hats, or shirts should be allowed. I write this all as a student who comes to this school daily. I write this as a former bully and victim. I don't know who needs to read this to make these changes happen, but please make it happen. The second thing that I wanted to share in terms of student experience is some feedback from alumni. So some members of the EDI committee were lucky and privileged enough to meet with some alumni. The graduation years were 2011 to 2021. So we had a decade there, which it spanned over in terms of experience. And I wanted to make sure that we shared out some of the things that they shared with us. I believe at the last presentation that was asked and we didn't have the information, so I wanted to make sure that, we addressed it. Some of the things that they shared about their experiences were jokes from students about cultural norms, so food brought for lunches, stereotypical comments, experience of some teachers turning a blind eye towards bantering when it came to racial topics. Some students felt like they could not turn to their teachers as they were not comfortable approaching teachers that, quote, would not understand their experience. And some students did feel that they had allies in their teachers that they could turn to when they needed to have someone to talk to. They had shared with us that, all areas of diversity are incredibly important, and we should be aware of all areas of diversity within our district. They thought that information should be provided to students regarding many topics, such as microaggressions. They definitely said that they would love to see staff members get training. And some of the topics that they included were awareness, sensitivity training, bias training, teaching tolerance. The takeaway from most of these individuals were that, they may not have experienced, in their words, the best experience at Spring-Ford possible. And to be honest, I don't know which one of our school experiences were the best experience possible. But they are thriving now. They have a great group of friends, they have great jobs, they know where they're at in their life, and they want to tell current students that it's going to be okay, and that, Spring-Ford did say that they were grateful for the experiences that they had at Spring-Ford with many teachers that did impact them positively. But their hearts really went out for the students here that are struggling with the same things that they struggled with maybe a decade ago. Some of the recommendations for us, just as alumni that had gone through the community and the district, some of them are still community members, some of them are in other countries and are international. They recommended a mentor program. They recommended posting about alumni of all diverse groups so that current students could see how well our Spring-Ford grads are doing. Training for all, and they meant not just teachers, but every employee within the district and also students when we're ready to do that, and high school internship programs. So those were the student voices that we wanted to make sure we shared, which kind of leads us to goal 3, which was the need for inclusive excellence training. And again, we have the inclusive excellence definition on the slide there. The objective was to offer excellence training and strategies to teachers, staff, and administrators. And again, this is our action plan, and so we wanted to, at this point, keep it to teachers, staff, and administrators. The deliverables would be professional development for all staff that fosters awareness of diverse perspectives and backgrounds, and our measurables would be to administer a benchmark survey to staff. To students also, which would be optional, prior to implementation of this professional development. And then we would re-administer the survey to staff, and again, students, optional, in spring 2023 to measure the progress. And then we would love to hold a student panel meeting. So our action steps would be the Spring-Ford leadership team and a select group of secondary teachers vetted a train-the-trainer draft presentation to be considered for future use. And again, that was a draft presentation. And the second step would be, as we did in 2021, we plan to have a student panel meeting where students will have the opportunities to ask questions of central administration during a question and answer session. Lastly is goal 4, which was to create an open and inclusive district community. So the objective was to create an opening and affirming community that is supportive, respectful, and values differing perspectives and experiences. Our deliverables would be pro-social activities, additional clubs offered to students, and mentorships. I'm not sure everyone's familiar with that term, pro-social activities, especially if you have a secondary student or maybe that's where the focus is, but at the elementary level, I think most elementary parents know what pro-social activities are, but we put it at the bottom of the slide there just to make sure everyone understands. At Spring-Ford, a pro-social activity promotes positivity, helpfulness, and is intended to promote social acceptance and friendship. At the secondary level, we tend to think of this as what we call SEL, which is social emotional learning. Our measurables would be optional student survey, gathering information about student interests for clubs in grades 5 through 12, and students serving as mentors to younger students, and alumni serving as mentors to maybe those older high school students, so at the junior and senior level. So our last action steps, because we are at goal 4, would be to evaluate and increase pro-social activities in 5th grade to build stronger sense of community. 5th grade is a really important year because students are coming from 7 elementary schools and they're coming together, and it's a really great year to build unity within the community. We would survey, again, optional, for students in grades 5 to 12 to gain insight on clubs that they would like to see added to the current offerings. We would consider expanding clubs, especially at the secondary level, that represent the needs and voice of the students. And then we would love to develop mentorship opportunities for students. So students at the high school level would be provided the opportunity to mentor students at the elementary level and middle levels. And alumni would be provided the opportunity to voluntarily mentor students at the high school level. And we would begin that process by reaching out to alumni who have already expressed interest in doing so. So currently, just so we're all kind of on the same page, we've been holding EDI committee meetings, EDI subcommittee meetings, parent subcommittee meetings, and some of the things that we've looked over is policy, right? Policy 128, and making sure that the language is correct, the purpose is correct. We are trying to be as transparent as possible with our goals. And then we also took some time to look at the action plan review, and again, we wanted to make sure that everybody understood that, you know, while the consultant did come in and give us recommendations, our action plan is also based on what we've learned from parents, what we've learned from students, our own experiences, and what we see as needs within our Spring-Ford community. So I just wanted to say thank you to the Spring-Ford Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, as well as the Parent Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee for their ongoing work. And in terms of questions, I'm sure there are some, I'm not sure that I can answer all of them, so depending on the content of the question, we will get the most qualified person to make sure that we address your questions and respond to you in an appropriate manner. Thank you.
I'll go first.
Thank you very much for doing that. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Certainly, I want to thank you for the efforts, too, because I know that that was a very clear, concise presentation, but it took a lot to get to that point, a lot of hours meeting with other people and gathering information. So I do want to thank you for that. I'd be interested in hearing some of the timelines as these things come about, the clubs, things like that. I hope that you can continue to keep us involved in all of that. I do also want to point out that so many of these things I think we've already been doing as a district, but to have that renewed focus on them is great, and especially at this time, because so many of what things that you're talking about kind of overlap with the mental health issues, that the ways that schools are advised to help with mental health in the times of COVID, such as Unity and the clubs and things like that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Jackson?
Good evening. Thank you for the effort that's been put forth with the presentation. I'm sure there are a lot of questions, and you're not going to answer them all tonight, and I'm sure all the questions will not be asked tonight. I'd like to start with the foundation. Can you just touch base on the EDI committee, the EDI subcommittee, and the parent subcommittee? Just sort of give me a big picture of what their involvement was and what their involvement would be going forward.
Sure, and I can start, and then Beth, you can jump in. So our EDI committee is the overall major committee. We meet monthly. The EDI subcommittee, there are 4 subcommittees within that. We have a student subcommittee, we have a professional development subcommittee, we have a curriculum subcommittee, and we have a community subcommittee. The parent subcommittee was also formed, and they usually meet 2 times a month because they're amazing. And we work on whatever is needed at that point. So I'll give you an example. So when this action plan came up, right, and we got the recommendation and we were sort of putting things together, we wanted to make sure that everyone was on board and that every subcommittee would be able to address something within the action plan, right? Because if it can't, then we're not exactly sure what the purpose is for that. In terms of the parent subcommittees, that's our connection to the community at this point. We're hoping to maybe bridge that connection a little bit more with our community subcommittee and our parent subcommittee. But those are the voices that we don't get to hear when we're meeting as a whole group. And so they sort of stand in for us as a voice from the community.
How many parents are on the parent subcommittee, ballpark?
Sure, we have around 10 or 11 parents that currently serve on the subcommittee.
And if there was a parent in the audience that had questions, how could they go about participating or joining the parent committee, or is that door closed right now?
At this time, it's closed. We are trying to keep the committee small at this point in time until we match the parent committee up with the community subcommittee, and then hopefully make determinations on how to move forward from there. But at this point, we're trying to keep it at a smaller level.
When do you project that there will be another update to the overall program?
In terms of parent subcommittees? Is that
No,
what you're
just overall.
So one of the reasons that I'm serving as EDI chair was because our consultant had told us that it probably wasn't the best idea for an admin to be serving as a chair within the EDI committee. I think that's a job overall responsibility-wise has a lot of EDI embedded in that. And so the idea was that an admin could then serve as an advisor on a broader scope. So even the EDI chair itself is just a one-year position, so I will be done after this school year and another member will be stepping in. I think at the end of the school year is a good time to start figuring out what do we need to add, what do we need to take away. So I would say that probably in the fall of this year, we would start looking at how we want to, add onto those existing subcommittees.
And will this approach be the same for the other committees? A transition of new voices, new faces, new approach, not approach, but just new thoughts?
Yeah, so the subcommittees will stay with the members that are there. We're obviously always accepting more members into the EDI committee as a whole, and then they pick a subcommittee to serve on. The idea is that even within the co-chairs, that'll be a one-year position so that it's constantly rotating. Just in terms of perspective, I think that's important in leadership, so.
Thank you.
Any other board members have any questions?
I have just a few. So I think you had some really good concrete suggestions of how you're going to move forward and implement the action plan. A lot of it, though, and I think Dr. Wright mentioned this, that a lot of it's already happening at this point. I do get the renewed focus. I guess I'm struggling a little bit with what is really brand new, but I think some of those mentorship and internship references that you made could be additions to programming that we have in place already. What did Mr. Wiley bring to the table that you felt like you could include here? And is that something that you're going to be asking us to continue? What is your position on that? Or do we have enough information and guidance from Mr. Wiley that this is now going to take off and these action plans are going to be put into place and we're able, or you're able as a committee to kind of foster those and help them to grow? What is...
So I'll go first, and then I was going to say, in terms of action plans, I think it's really important to know that the EDI committee is really just there to offer suggestions, right? And I mean, we really don't have the authority to really do anything, right? We're kind of there to suggest, right? And to have these conversations and make suggestions. In terms of Carlos Wiley's recommendations, we took what we had from him and we created this action plan for something that's realistic at Springford. He met with us 3 times, right? Once in August, I think October, and then January. And within that time, I think he was gathering information. He's not from this community, and so there's a lot to learn. I think he met with some parents, he met with students directly, he met with some teachers. In terms of where we go from here, and I understand what you're saying with things that already exist, I think the idea is to build on them more purposefully. So when you say mentorship in terms of staff, we were having a conversation about this earlier, and I said, oh, we kind of have mentorship programs for staff, but not with this angle, right? Not with the diversity angle. And in terms of student mentorship, I do think that is something that's lacking within the student body, and that is really a piece. And I'm the teacher, right, of the group, so that's definitely a piece that I feel very strongly about, and I think, that's definitely something new. In terms of our consultant, now that we have these concrete things, right, the idea is that he's trained and he has more experience in things on how we can roll out these concrete efforts that we now have. And Beth, you can speak to that if you have anything to add.
That's good. I just wanted to see where the contribution was. I see what you're saying, and that it sounds like it helped to shape the information that you needed to gather, and then as a group you created this action plan. I know it came up several times. What specifically is this addressing? I think that maybe the letter from your student was a tip of the iceberg, because I'm still not hearing, and I don't know if anybody else feels this way, but what the exact issue is. We certainly don't want to, have a blind eye to something that's going on. But if we're going to do all these things, we just want to know what are we addressing?
I'm going to say from a teacher standpoint, and I'm sorry, did I cut you off? Okay. I'm going to say from a teacher standpoint, and I'll be honest, I love Springford. I've been here since 2008. I have a lot of pride in the place where I work and the people that I get to work with. I do think that there needs to be a culture shift in terms of whether or not every single student is feeling safe and welcomed and valued. And one of those things, for me, is, that's why we put up the staff and student demographic. I think that's one piece of it, is that students know that there are teachers who've experienced what they've experienced, right? And I think that's something that was mentioned by the alumni, that some students did feel like they had allies, and that was very clear. And other students didn't know who to go to because they didn't know if the teacher had a similar experience to them, and I think part of that, for me, comes with training also, right? Like, there are so many other pieces and conversations, and that's what we do within the EDI committee itself. So for me, I would like to see a culture shift in terms of making sure, and not that one group is valued over another. I want to be very transparent in saying that. It's that all groups are accepted, right? And when we can make sure that one group has met their needs, everybody really benefits from that, right? And so I think that's the idea, to make sure that every student group has their needs met and that they have access to what is going to make them successful post-high school, right? And that's not just career-wise or education-wise, but also in life, right, in terms of identity and their own value.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I tried. I don't know if that was enough. Was that good?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I wanted to make sure. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. So.
Thank you. I do like how you continue to return to the focus on student involvement, student experience, and student voice, and that value. So thank you for that. Mrs. Deardorff?
Thank you, and I wanted to thank you all immensely for your work, too. I was wondering if you could give an example of what inclusive excellence training would entail, or is that something that would be ongoing? Just a little bit, because it's very wordy.
Yeah.
But to give a little bit more detail of what that would be hands-on.
Sure. And it's one of those buzzwords, right? And we don't really know what it means. And the problem is it is a very general idea also. In terms of inclusive excellence training for us, I think one of the things that we needed to do, and this is why we didn't come right out and say, like, we have a training set up, is because we are very much still in the process of figuring out what that looks like for our district and its employees and what's relevant for our district and its employees. I think, honestly, the alumni had some good ideas. In terms of just sensitivity training or teaching tolerance, I think that's an important angle to go with. And again, it's the acknowledgement, right? It's the acknowledgement of the differences. What does that look like? We were saying that we don't want it to be a one big sit and get 8 hours of intense training, because I don't think that's going to work. I think it's better we were saying probably to embed it in in-service days that already exist and opportunities that already exist. And so it's not a one and done deal. I think, earlier I had mentioned the idea of a culture shift, and to truly have buy-in and for people to understand it can't just be a one-time thing. And so I don't think inclusive excellence training is something like, a really intense 8-hour boot camp on how to be culturally, aware. I think instead it's more understanding that it should be embedded in our, everyday strategies and techniques that we're using with students and colleagues and the community.
Thank you so much, and I do like how the focus is not as specific issue-based as more of creating a community of that culture shift, of that encompasses all of these things. So I think a lot of times we look at wanting it to be very specific, like we're doing this because of X, or we're doing this because of Y, but really we're doing it because of A, B, C, D, E, so that everybody is included and valued and seen. So I appreciate that focus. And my last question, is there any current professionals, since I'm not privy to what professional development our staff are already receiving, is there anything currently going on or that has recently already occurred that you feel fits into that inclusivity excellence?
As of this year, there hasn't been anything along those lines. The in-service days had been planned out last year for this year, so we're hoping to get more information on the radar next year for next year's calendar. But as Ms. Vuller was saying, what we're really hoping to do is take the professional development and break it down into very small, tangible timeframes during a staff meeting where you can implement how to deal with difficult conversations that you might need to have. You learn some techniques one day and maybe the next day then have the opportunity to practice. So more of that job-embedded PD is what we're looking to do.
Thank you. Mrs. Weingarten?
Hi there. First, thank you very much for the way this was presented. I think adding the definition shows your commitment to make sure that our community understands what these things mean and that we don't have preconceived definitions of these. So I found it to be really thoughtful and really helpful the way you presented that. It'll help us all begin to have these conversations and understand what the other person is saying. So I really appreciate that. And hearing the stories from the student, very, very impactful. And I'm sure that's going to be a message that we hear quite often, both good and bad, right? And so I'm wondering, when we talk about measuring the culture shift, do you have examples of other schools that were able to show you, even if it's a slight beginning, to say, these are the things that we've done, what does that culture shift look like? Because, there's quantitative, qualitative data, a lot of things that we could put together, but what does that look like?
For me, from what I've seen and from what I've talked to with other students, and when I say other students, I mean students from other districts, is this idea, and this is why we put in clubs, the idea of being open to clubs that are representative of student need, right? And so it's got to be diverse, right? And when we have members of those clubs, then we realize that it is representative of the student population. And so I think when a student can say, hey, this is what I would like to meet with other students about, right? This is what I feel my purpose is. This is my passion. And be able to go to a teacher or an admin and have admin or a teacher say, hey, we can make that happen for you, right? There are people here to support that initiative or whatever that may be. I think that's one of the first pieces, because the truth is we're all incredibly diverse, and I mean, none of us are going to join the same club, right? I know that for a fact. But the idea that students have choices in these clubs and know that there's at least one other person there, whether that is the staff advisor, whether that's another student, I think that's part of the climate shift, and I think that shows true acceptance, right? And so whether or not we all join the same club, I think it's the idea of offering those options.
So we'll keep track of student population, reaction, talking to them, and basically finding out how, keeping a pulse on what's working and what's not working. And the folks in charge of those clubs will be tied into a committee to talk about it, or how do we, I guess I'm wondering how we collect that data.
Yeah, so one of those components would be the optional student surveys, and the idea is that it's optional, and so hopefully students that are filling out the survey probably would like a certain club to be started, right? The student subcommittee usually works with certain clubs already, right? So we get a full club list at the beginning of the school year. We see what's approved. We know who the staff advisors are, and those are the kind of connections that we're trying to make. And those are one of the things that the student subcommittee does do. They check to make sure what the clubs are. When there are events, we make sure that we try to connect different staff advisors and make sure that students' needs are being met. So that is one of those things that we now definitely, after this action plan, we'll have to put on our radar to really monitor a little bit more.
So we'll see points of measurement throughout as this progresses?
Yeah, I think the idea with that is, I think we have all of our clubs published on the webpage. And if at any point, the board needs to see a list and what's new, and, that's definitely doable. The other thing with club formation is that they have to be approved, and there has to be a budget for that, right? So not every club can be approved. I do want to point out, though, that most clubs, at least at the high school level, from my understanding, because I run one official club and one unofficial club, is that as long as admin approves, the club can still run unofficially until there's budget for it to be official. So those students' needs hopefully will still be met in that way.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mrs. Harmons?
Thank you very much for coming today and sharing these objectives, because I know that you were tasked with coming forward with something tangible, and I think that this presentation hit the mark with regards to that. My question is with regards to accountability. So I heard, or maybe I should just say, like in a lot of organizations, the goals, the objectives, the strategic vision when it comes to EDI initiative lies with administration, so that would be Ms. Lease, Mr. Rizzo, and then oftentimes there is another individual, a director of EDI or some type of chair, right, maybe you, Ms. Valor, who is responsible for overseeing the execution of these action steps that you've outlined in the presentation. So I guess my question is, in a district as big as Springford, where we have as many buildings as we do and as spread out as we are, who ultimately has responsibility and oversight with ensuring that these action steps get executed?
So remember earlier when I talked about who is qualified to answer that? I'm going to take a step back now. Please step in on that.
Thank you so much for that question. As we stated earlier in this presentation, the EDI committee comes forward and we make the recommendations, and we hope to work in conjunction with administration to implement these action plans. So as we move forward, it would be the EDI committee in conjunction with whatever building administrator or building liaison, we would be working with those individuals to make these plans come to fruition. So long story short, it's really building administration in conjunction with EDI that will be holding one another accountable to implement. I also want you to be aware that we are also in a consortium. Montgomery County Intermediate Unit has pulled together school districts from across the county that also have EDI committees. So we are one of many across the county, and we are also learning from other school districts how to do exactly what you're talking about. So we're not reinventing a wheel, but when we have these meetings, there's only been one so far, but when we do have these meetings, I certainly have peers across the county that I can bounce ideas off of as well.
Just got a couple other questions.
Could I have a chance?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mrs. Arrow? Mr. Schaefer?
When I heard the letter from the student, it was shocking to me, and maybe I'm naive, but I had no idea that things were, maybe I'm reading more into it, that are as widespread as that. And I know that as a school district, there's only so much we can do with the kids to open up their minds, because they're going to have their home and community, input that might be leading them in another direction. However, two parts that really bothered me was, one, that she did not know who to go to. That, to me, they shouldn't, if it's their guidance counselor, I don't know, or if there's a, EDI person in each school, that obviously has to be someone that all the students trust, that they can take these concerns to, or even if there's I don't know, maybe it comes under the safe to say thing where they can do something anonymously, but the other point that really disturbed me was teachers taking no action, that clearly observed things going on and that they took no action. That, to me, is something we can address, and if you cannot change the teachers' personal biases, they can at least be trained to learn how to cover them up and at least act like they care. That really, really disturbed me. So I don't know if there's how you address that.
I think there are two things to sort of speak on that. So the first would be, a student comes into a high school and it's a big building, right? And so relationships aren't built yet with administrators with teachers yet, with guidance counselors maybe, they're not there yet. And so the idea that a student says, I don't know who to go to, there are two things there. One, they may not be comfortable because they don't know really those relationships yet. But two, it might be that they see it as such a large problem that they're not sure how high up they need to go. And I think that's why she wrote in here, whoever needs to hear it, right? And she specifically said, share it at a board meeting, share it to the community, like people need to know. Secondly, in terms of the teachers, I will say that most student accounts that I've heard, this behavior isn't consistently happening within classrooms. They're mainly happening within the hallways. And so I think when teachers aren't stepping in, it's not from lack of care, and I can say that as a teacher, and I'll speak for my colleagues, that teachers love the students in this district. I think it might be lack of training on how to address students that they don't know, they don't have a relationship with. Did they hear it correctly, right? What is the next step? And I think those are the things, those are the tangibles that we need, right, to address something like a culture shift, so that students don't just feel safe in a classroom. When they walk out and they turn the corner, they should still feel safe and valued and affirmed. And so in terms of the teacher part, I think some of it is that. I don't think that it's lack of caring. I do think that it's not exactly knowing the right words, how to step in, and what the action plan is after.
So are there some steps being taken to address that?
I think that is, again, on the building administration level, because depending on what that looks like at each building, right, and depending on the grade level, I mean, infractions should be treated very differently at different grades, right, in terms of what's a learning experience and situation and a mistake, and what is hateful or targeting, right? And so that's sort of at the building level, but that's also something that we would like to address with training, and that's why we were saying we're sort of in the process, because there's this general training that needs to occur, and then there's Spring-Ford very specific training that needs to occur. So when we hear these things, what then is our next step? And that's more, I think, at the admin building level.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schaefer?
Just briefly, so Mrs. Lees, thank you very much. Ms. Valor, I have to say, both of my kids had you, loved you. I mean, you're a fantastic teacher, so I'm going to take that opportunity to thank you for that. So a lot of my colleagues asked questions that were close, so I don't want to have you all standing up there for any more time than you already are. But in general, balance is, I think, a key word, right? So my perception, I'm not a teacher here, but there's a lot on everyone's plate, right? So we have to sort of balance, and if we're going to inject professional learning in this direction, that's great, but then there's also other things that we're not academically looking at. So we have to sort of balance the way to do that. Again, culture does not change quickly. This culture was created over many, many, many years, right? So introducing a culture change is something that we have to understand is sort of a long walk, right? So we just have to have that. I'm not saying don't, but just recognize that this thing isn't going to, turn on a dime. And also, again, balance with regards to our professional staffing. I realize that there's a lot of resignations, and that's systemic across the country in education. So it would concern me that we would constrict and I'm not suggesting, Mrs. Lees, you have a great handle on this, but I just want to make sure we're hiring the best candidates, and certainly be respectful of the fact that, we'd like to see a little more to match our student population for sure. But I want to see the best here, period, end of story. That to me is the most important. So with that, this was an update, right? Like, just because we hadn't seen this, but there's not necessarily any action items that we're approving, we're just getting an update, correct? Okay, with that, thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson.
Hi there, a couple more questions. I keep hearing, and I'm going to follow up on Mr. Schaefer, this cultural shift. Spring-Ford is student-wise, race-wise, it's 78% white students. The staff is 97% white. So when you say cultural shift, I'm trying to understand what that means in relations to this cultural shift, this training, I'm not sure what training can really take place that's effective. You're talking about speaking with someone in their 20s, 30s, or 40s. They haven't lived under a rock. So what issues that we're talking about, they see every day on the media of some sort. So I'm really struggling with, we're going to train people. What do we mean by training them? I struggle with training because if they don't have it by now, I don't know if they're going to get it. So that's one aspect I struggle with. When you say bringing the alumni back, I go back to the percentages of the school district. So are we looking at bringing specific races back or diverse of people, or what are we talking about when we're saying bringing alumni back?
Do you want me to respond now?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I think there were like three
Three.
questions or three comments. Okay. So the first being the term of cultural shift. I'm going to say Linda Valor said that term. Okay, that was me trying to explain what I envisioned in terms. I think there's sort of an issue with always considering culture within the school district to be race related. So I wasn't saying like a cultural shift in terms of we need to get different types of students within the building. I'm talking about a learning culture, right? Like the way our community is with each other. And I'm talking about student relationships is what I'm talking about. So peer-to-peer bonding, that sort of culture. So I try to foster a culture of respect in my classroom. I try to foster a culture of learning and vulnerability in my classroom. That's what I mean by culture. So I'm sorry if it came across as race or ethnicity. That's definitely not what I intended for that. In terms of training, I think that's professional development, right? And I'm going to say I've been here since 2008, and there have been many things that I've learned along the way that I will be honest telling you that I had to reset, reevaluate, and self-reflect, okay? And I mean, you know, I'm pretty old now, so I've gathered some things along the way that I didn't come in knowing. You know, I taught at a city fringe school in Illinois, which was a very different demographic than the demographic here at Spring-Ford. And there were things that I needed to learn about the student population, about terminology, about language, about their life experiences, even within socioeconomic status. I don't think that teachers are too old to learn. I think that when teachers know that it's for the benefit of the student, I am pretty sure our teachers will do anything. And in terms of training and what that looks like, as Mr. Schaefer said earlier, you know, this is the long game, right? Like this isn't going to happen overnight. And in terms of training also, we don't want it to be a one and done. These are things that should be recognized. I think recognition of differences is probably the first step. And I'll tell you, if we can get there, I think then the other things will be a little bit easier to grasp. I don't think that we're expecting teachers to come in and be completely different the day after a training. I don't think that's going to happen. In terms of training and like what that looks like, we've done professional development before when it comes to ideas of social emotional learning. Those are the kind of pieces that we're thinking. And many of us, after last year's, the beginning of last year, you know, we have a bank of social emotional learning resources at the high school that I know many of my colleagues use on a weekly basis now. It's not something that I would have even thought to think about. I was told about it. I realized how important it was, especially at this point with what's going on in the world. And I think most of our teachers have embedded that. And so I think when teachers are invested and they understand the value of whatever the training may be, and again, I'm not a trainer, right? And I haven't been trained to do it, so I can't really speak to what that specifically looks like. But my hope is that none of us are too old to learn. So at some point, right, if we know that it's for the students, we're going to be invested.
And two final statements, and I'm going to follow up on what Ms. Herman made reference to. I think, and the way I look at the school district, the board, the principals, to me, you have a board, you have a CEO who is Mr. Rizzo. We have principals at every school, which to me are vice presidents of a division. So from an EDI enforcement perspective or implementation, that should stay with the principal. That should be the ultimate person, male or female, that's responsible for any issue, because right now, they're responsible for any issue that occurs on their watch, and this should not be any different. Thank you.
Thank
And I
you.
think we would agree with that statement.
Mrs. Zasowski had something else she wanted to ask?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the teachers for a minute that Mr. Schaefer referenced earlier. There are, I think, 22, was it you, Mr. Schaefer, or you, Mr. Jackson, that said we have a great number of retirees. And we know, Beth, I know you work so hard to get those positions filled. So my thought is, yes, you know, we have to raise our sensitivity to this, but first and foremost, obviously, we have to always try to strive to hire the best for Springford. That's what we have now, that's what we want to keep having, but we do want this sensitivity, of awareness for sensitivity to be part of that also. So I guess I just needed to clarify about that I was feeling about that. And when did you say that we would get another update? Did you say the fall? Or
I did not say that for the
Okay.
record. No, I think Mr. Jackson had asked when we would revisit subcommittee chairs and committee chairs and when things would move, and I said we would probably be doing that in fall of 2022.
Okay. When would there be another, and maybe Mr. Rizzo, you know that, when would there be another update to the board? Because it sounds like there are some great ideas here that hopefully are going to be put into action. We'd love to hear about, oh, sorry, go ahead, sorry. We'd love to hear about when that's going to happen.
We could have it whenever, but I think we need some time. We need some time to, so to say in 2 months, I don't think it's fair to say that right now. To say in 1 month is probably not fair. By the end of the year, sure. I think we need some time. Again, I think we have a good plan. Now, how we implement it, what the action steps are going to be, the timelines, things like that, we want to have some things concrete. What we don't want to do is come back with essentially the same presentation again, right? So I think we need a little time, but yeah, we'll expect something to you pretty soon. Well, by end of year, yeah.
I think that was good.
Mr. Rizzo, don't box yourself in. Just say when we have the information, we'll come back to the board. Don't commit to something you're not comfortable with right now.
Just tell me to keep it simple?
Yeah, keep it simple.
All right.
And one last thing. I keep hearing we want to hire the best. I've heard that 3 times tonight, and I'm not sure what that really means. That we're talking about EDI, and I've heard it 3 times now, that we need to hire the best students, or teachers, students too. But what are we implying by saying that? Or what are we asking? Or what are we saying that we don't want to say?
I think I'm referencing that we want their first and foremost are the qualifications of the individuals, whoever they might be, to be evaluated first, and then we go from there.
Sure, so if I can just speak
But
to that.
that's our normal process. So I'm really trying
Correct,
to
and
understand
I was
that.
asking if that was going to be continuing in addition to having the lens or the awareness and the sensitivity piece. But first and foremost, it has to be the qualifications of the individual applying for a position. I mean, that almost goes without saying.
Right, so that's why I don't understand why we're saying that now.
Well, I think it was taking that and spreading the wings to new organizations, new relationships with other colleges that may be a little further than our usual lasso.
If I could piggyback perhaps on that question and to kind of bring it back to what the community brought to us tonight, could you speak to, are we skipping over qualified candidates to fulfill this mission, or can you confidently say that we are striving to get the most qualified candidates regardless right now? Obviously, we want to have that lens, but of course, we don't want to have holes in our staffing that is struggling right now. So if you could speak to that.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. I have and I always will hire the best candidate for the position, regardless. That's my job. We've been extremely successful with our staff, as you can see, by all the accolades that this district has gotten. We hire the best teachers. We hire the teachers who work hard, who care about our students, and are passionate about our community. That will not change. What we are doing is expanding our reach. We are contacting historically Black and Hispanic colleges and universities. We are working to try to build pipelines with universities and colleges to bring in student teachers to give them different experiences. We've contacted some schools in the city. We're placed uniquely in the county that it's a little bit difficult to get students who attend some of the schools in Philadelphia to come out to our area. But we are working, those are the pipelines we were looking to build. And quite honestly, there's a teacher shortage. I'm happy to get any qualified teachers at this point in time that we can. So we are looking to build pipelines. We're actually looking to build pipelines within our school district as it is, tapping into our own students to encourage them to become teachers as well. So to answer your question, no, I am not looking to fill a quota. I will always hire the best person for the job.
And Ms. Lees, thank you for clarifying that, because Mr. Jackson, your question was an excellent question, and it was exactly what was on my mind as well. I think there's a difference here when we see the objective when it comes to increased recruitment strategies that attract diverse groups when hiring new staff. Right? We're talking about expanding the reach and the pipeline and building our talent, right? Making sure that we're developing our talent within Spring Forward, as well as looking at organizations where maybe we can target high-performing talent from underrepresented communities. I think that's really important because there is an escalating demand, as you mentioned, on attracting and retaining diverse talent. So I'm glad that you were able to clarify that it's not about the actual interviewing process where we're playing favoritism to one versus other, but it's making sure that everyone has an opportunity to be able to be looked at for these positions.
Did you want?
Just to follow up, Spring Forward is an amazing school district. Spring Forward was on my radar for my connections in the music community, but also in the technology as Spring Forward took on hybrid learning, and I learned about the district a few different ways. There's a lot of people out there that do not know about Spring Forward and do not know about the great things Spring Forward does. We're talking about expanding that. We're talking about making Spring Forward known even more than it already is, to bring in the highest quality talent that are content experts, that are student experts, that know how to make connections and know how to teach students to make connections with each other and make meaningful connections with text and with teachers and feel connected. That's what we're bringing in. When we talk about what the best is, it's the best in their content area and the best in knowing students, all students.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this presentation. But before you step down, I also want to thank the board. I think that their questions were very, very considerate, and everyone seems to have given a lot of thought and consideration to this. Before we do, though, I would like Aditi and Allison to have the opportunity to share any insights as students in our district, if they'd like to share anything.
Yes, we were in fact planning to. So first of all, Ali and I have some words, and thank you so much for the presentation. It was very valuable to see how much you're presenting, like the school board, what issues that the students are facing. And I think that's really valuable because in this day and age, we're seeing a lot of issues come to light, and we're thankful that you're presenting that in the form of a report. Also, in terms of your structure, I really enjoyed how you have alumni giving their expertise, as well as the current students and a parent committee. That's like 3 different levels of ways to really bring a different perspective to Spring Forward. And especially, I would be interested to hear like the alumni lens, since they've had the opportunity to further their education, how like maybe their perspective has changed after that. So those were my thoughts, and thank you once again.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Aditi said, and thank you very much for your presentation. And I can definitely say, as a Spring Forward student, that a lot of the concerns and experiences that were reflected in that presentation, I and Aditi can corroborate as students at the high school. I really want to emphasize the fact that the students that I'm around, members of the student body, are extremely outspoken and incredibly apt to become involved, especially with issues like these. And so I think that the initiatives discussed in the presentation, like a student panel, clubs, mentorship programs, student surveys, will absolutely be taken advantage of by the students and will not go unused. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Lees and Mrs. Valor, very much for your presentation tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
At the- All right, at this time, we have our second presentation for the evening. I'm going to Mr. Rizzo.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. January is Board Appreciation Month. I just want to take a few minutes to say a few words for the work that these 9 board members do. 9 out of every 10 students in the United States attend public schools. Therefore, access to high-quality public education is crucial, not only for our children's success, but for the strength of our society. It takes a team of dedicated people, teachers, administrators, support staff, parents, and community members to provide that education. The 9 members of your local school board are a key part of this team, making it informed decisions that shape our public schools. January is designated as School Director Recognition Month, a time for us to celebrate and recognize the challenging and vital work that boards do on behalf of our students, schools, and families. On average, school directors devote up to 10 hours per month to the complex responsibilities. We laugh at that because it's a little more than 10 these days, right? Including adopting policies, voting on budgets, reviewing hiring decisions, and attending sometimes lengthy and challenging meetings. Any of those? The impact of the coronavirus pandemic has added an additional challenge to our boards as they determine how best to provide for the needs of students and their families in this new environment. From navigating virtual board meetings to supplying students with needed food and technology and during remote instruction, boards have been tasked with making critical decisions quickly with the best information available, and I would add into that ever-changing information. Board services is an unpaid position, and the majority of our school directors cite their desire to give back or contribute to public education as their main motivation for their service. As locally elected officials, school directors are invested in their communities. They are our neighbors, friends, local leaders, parents, and engaged citizens. Tonight, I'd like to just take a moment and acknowledge our board members and their years of service, starting with Abby Deerdorf in her first year, Wendy Earl in her 3rd year, Erica Hermans as vice president in her 1st year, Clinton Jackson in his 9th year, Dave Schaefer in his 8th year, Diane Sullivan in her 3rd year, Karen Weingarten in her 1st year, Maggie Wright, our president, in her 3rd year, and Ms. Colleen Zasowski in her 7th year. During this month, designated for recognizing these public servants, please take a moment to express your gratitude for school directors' time and efforts year-round on behalf of our communities. The job they do ensures our schools continue to provide opportunities for success for every student, even during unprecedented circumstances. Thank them for advocating on behalf of our collective interests and for the benefit of our children. Successful school boards equal successful school districts. Successful school boards listen, and they make difficult decisions, and they have engaging conversations that aren't always sometimes one-sided. And I'm really thankful for this board. I'm really thankful for the opportunities that they provide our students, and they're willing to, and this board being willing to tackle some of the more challenging things that come our way head-on, and they don't hide anything. They want to bring it forward and have a conversation. So thank you for your service. I look forward to the next year working with you. And again, I appreciate you.
Thank you very much. And personally, I'd like to say that I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to serve on this board. And I'm very grateful to the administration and to you, Mr. Rizzo, to work so closely with this administration. I appreciate it. Is there any other board members that would like to make a comment?
Just want to say, Mr. Rizzo, that was a great speech, but I think we need to adjust the hours that you were talking about in that speech.
It might have been a typo. I don't know.
Might have been.
All right, if there are no other comments, then we would need to move on to the committee reports. Our first report would be the student representative report.
We don't have a full presentation to add on to our student report last week. I think we have a few minor updates. Number one is that midterm exams are happening in high school right now. Those are in progress. And the conclusion of the second marking period will be occurring tomorrow, January 25th. And I'll turn it over to Aditi to see if she has anything to add.
Yes, I do have one special announcement. I would like to say congrats to our very own student representative, Allison McVeigh, for being selected to join the U.S. Senate Youth Program. Allie will represent Pennsylvania during their 60th annual USSYP Washington Week in March. Allie was selected from among the state's top student leaders to be part of the 104 National Student Delegation, who will also each receive a $10,000 college scholarship for their undergraduate study. Due to the ongoing pandemic, the 2022 program will be held online through a comprehensive and highly interactive virtual education and leadership forum. We look forward to hearing more about your experience. Congrats, Allie. I'm looking forward to hear how it goes.
Thank you very much, Aditi. And I guess the one thing that I'd like to emphasize is that having the opportunity to pursue that was birthed because of the opportunities that I've been given here in Springford and all of the assets that come with being a student here. So thank you all very much.
Congratulations. That's wonderful. We can't wait to hear about it. And I think you won't be allowed to attend because you're going to have to be here probably for a board meeting or something like that. So. Okay, if there's nothing else from the students, community relations, Mrs. Zasowski?
Yeah, so we met back on January 4th. It was one of the first committee meetings of the new year. And we will be back to the bi-monthly basis for both community relations and extracurricular. So we'll be alternating monthly meetings for those two committees. Ms. Crew provided a communications department update as she does each year. And then based on information that is available through the Chester County, through a Chester County IU communications audit, Ms. Crew recommended that we table our trademarking discussion until after that audit is complete. Ms. Crew also shared a proposal from that Chester County Intermediate Unit Communications Division to conduct a communications audit. The committee discussed the proposal and asked Ms. Crew to gather more information from the Chester County Intermediate Unit before the next meeting in March. As I said earlier tonight, we did have a discussion during the President's Council about a program or project that the Springford Booster Club is undertaking, and we had some discussion about that at the Community Relations Committee as well. Those in attendance, community members and board members, do know that it is an opportunity to unify the community, and that discussion during that meeting was information only. We were gathering information, sharing information, and we asked for any publicizing to be held off until details were worked out. So I know you all have no idea, for the most part, what I'm talking about. But it is a project, like I said in the beginning of the meeting, that I think will be embraced by the community, and the efforts will be to unify the community. So watch for that coming soon. Also, each year, the Pennsylvania School Public Relations Association, PennSPRA, provides an opportunity for school district communication professionals to be recognized in the annual Excellence in Education Communications Contest. And each year, Ms. Crew and Mr. Rothermel do contribute or give many entries, several entries into that program. They will again submit some Springford publications this year, and will share updates later this year. I will tell you that they have been very successful, and our communications programming has won many awards over the years. The committee members also discussed the opportunity to bring the Zoom capability back to committee meetings in this year of 2022. I asked Mr. Rothermel if this would be possible with minimal support from his team, and he indicated that we have the technology available to hold meetings in the district office and utilize Zoom with no additional support from his team. So I did ask for this to be put on the agenda.
It is.
And I mentioned that last meeting, so yes, it is on there. Yep. We also had a community member ask about how to best communicate with board members outside of public school board meetings, and we had a short discussion after that, as well as about presentations, and specifically the presentation from the EDI committee this evening. So at that point, we concluded the meeting, and we will meet again in March. And as I said, in the meantime, everybody keep your eyes open, because there's a big project coming. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thanks.
Legislative Committee, Mrs. Deerdorf, do you have a report?
I do. We met on last Wednesday as well, on the 19th, so I apologize I wasn't able to attend the President's meeting. I would have loved to be part of that. But I was on a Zoom call with representatives from the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit Legislative Committee. So that was school board members from Pottstown, Upper Marion, Colonial School District, Upper Moreland, Haverford, Methacton, PV, Upper Perk, Cheltenham, Lower Moreland, Wissahickon, Pottsgrove, and Souderton. So it was a really great opportunity to connect and get to know some fellow board members. Of note, the chair, Laura Johnson, who is a school board member right down the road in Pottstown, was given the PSBA Alwyn Society Award for her work with fair funding. So kind of special that she got a state award, and she's right down the street from us. So our congratulations to her. So much of the meeting was spent bringing the group up to speed about fair funding and about charter reform. So we got a lot of details about that, and then the MCIU gave a government and, let me click on it, Community and Government Relations report, which I did forward out to the board for your review. In short, I will not go over all of it, but if anybody from the community is interested in getting that report, feel free to reach out to me on email, and I'd be happy to share more details with you. But on the federal level, there's legislature addressing the school bus driver shortage. I found it was interesting that they're looking to modify some of the CDL requirements to help get more school bus drivers on the road. They're also increasing school meal reimbursement. So those are two really great things. And then locally in Pennsylvania, revenue, budget, education and stability, early literacy program, and some other increases. School funding lawsuit still continues to go on regarding the fair funding. Some things coming up are COVID education accountability House bill about supplemental online courses, and public school training mandate. So there's a lot of more details in there, and I am happy to share that if anybody is interested. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Deardorff?
Debbie, you might have Erin posted on the website so people don't have to inundate you with emails.
Sure, I would just check with MCIU how they disseminate that information, but that's a great idea. Thank you.
All right, if there are no other questions, going on, the MCIU meeting in which I will attend is tomorrow or Wednesday evening, so I do not have a report at this time. Mr. Schaefer, the PSBA?
No PSBA update for this month. However, a reminder that the extracurricular committee meeting will be a week from tomorrow, 6:30 at the district office.
Great, thank you very much. The American Legion Committee, Mrs. Sullivan is not here today, so we have no report from her. So that moves us to the Assistant Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam President, and good evening. This evening, I'd like to go through a few topics, 3 to be exact, 1 in the area of staff, 1 in the area of students, and 1 in the area of parents. I'm going to start with students first, early learners to be exact. The first one is in the area of early intervention. So this focuses on students who are not yet of school age, but definitely has an impact when they become school age eligible. And the term is called early intervention. Excuse me, and during that time, supports and services for students are designated to meet the developmental needs of our children with disabilities. Early intervention can begin at infancy and carry through to the age of 5 or school age. Any child who is currently receiving services through early intervention at the Montgomery County IU does go through a process called the transition process. This process includes meeting with parents, the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit, Springford school psychologists, our special education supervisors, and other personnel if needed. The purpose of the meeting is to discuss assessments and evaluation and in order to determine eligibility, continued eligibility for special education and or related services, or 504, as they enter in to the district in kindergarten. This year, Springford has had 50 names of incoming kindergarten students who are currently receiving early intervention. For the 22-23 school year, they will be coming into full half-day kindergarten. 43 of those meetings have already occurred over 2 days in the past few weeks. And the last meeting will be commencing on February 1st. There is a video that is applicable and available for parents who may have not had the ability to participate fully in the early intervention process through the MCIU and Spring-Ford. And it explains in great detail what the process includes. So if they would like to access that, they can reach that video on our website under the Special Education tab. The next I'd like to review is in reference to staff. So I would like to formally introduce a new staff member to our team here at Spring-Ford. We have a new administrator who has been named the new supervisor of elementary curriculum. Her name is Brianna Angelucci. I believe she is here, and we'd like to welcome her. Brianna was hired to replace Katie Gardy, who is now the director of curriculum. And lastly, I'd like to change gears and cover the parents' topic. So on January 20th, the Spring-Ford Special Education Parent Advisory Committee, otherwise known as CPAC, held its first meeting at the high school. Attendance at the meeting included 40 parents, both in person and online. The CPAC committee has been working alongside special education supervisors, the director of communication and her staff, a few school board members, both current and former, on the development of this special education parents group. This year, we held 2 meetings as a parent and school committee to listen, collaborate, and plan this event. The mission of the Spring-Ford Special Education Parent Advisory Committee is to work for the consideration, respect, support, inclusion, and appropriate education for all of the neurodiverse children within the Spring-Ford community. The group is actively looking for parents and community members to volunteer in leadership roles, including a co-chair, a secretary, and IT support. Parents should also look for information about CPAC in the upcoming weekly updates. Personally, I'd like to thank Kathy Morris, Leanne Graham, Jen Brown, Heidi Goldsmith, Gloria Vollert, and Nancy Chrisman for their enthusiasm and commitment for creating this organization, and I'm looking forward to great things happening this year and for many years to come. I speak on behalf of myself, Dr. Murray, and Mr. Rizzo in expressing our unwavering support and dedication to helping this committee grow and succeed. And lastly, there were a few questions last week raised about the topic of the Spring-Ford prom. We would like to update you on the most current information that we have, and to do that, I would like to introduce Dr. Rob Collier, principal of Spring-Ford Area High School, who will be providing us with that information. Dr. Collier?
Good evening, thank you. First, I'd like to say thank you to Mrs. Velour for presenting tonight. I value the conversations that I've had with her and other members of the committee and look forward to continued conversations and work in the future. A quick step back in regards to prom. We, a number of years ago, about 4 years ago, decided to split our prom as a junior-senior prom. We decided to move in the direction of 2 separate events, a junior prom and a senior prom. We have yet to be able to do that. This is the first year we'll be able to do that. Last year, capacity restrictions at our venues impacted our ability to have these events. So we're finally at the point to have a junior prom, and I wanted to just be able to give you some details in regards to that event coming up. The event itself will be held March 12th at the Sunnybrook Ballroom in Pottstown. The Sunnybrook is a 70,000 square foot venue with a capacity of nearly 1,000. In terms of anticipated students, our prom, our junior-senior prom, has typically had the ability to hold 900 or so students. So when we were a combined prom, we would be just over 900 students. So at that rate, we anticipate 300 to 400 juniors attending. We hope we do definitely get that number. We want to encourage our juniors to attend this event. Tickets will be going on sale February 14th through the 25th. Our junior and senior prom we do allow guests, outside guests to attend, so guest forums will be afforded to our students starting on January 31st. The seating at the venue at the Sunnybrook is our, the pretty standard tables, 8 to 10 students per table. Students self-select their tables. When they purchase their tickets, they select who they would like to sit with for the event. In terms of masking, students and staff will follow the conditions of the health and safety plan regarding the wearing of masks at the time of the event. Same thing with contact tracing. We will follow the guidance from the Montgomery County Office of Public Health and what their direction is at the time of the event. So we're prepared to do that and communicate that ahead of time or shortly ahead of time in regards to the event and those expectations. That's kind of all I have for you in regards to the junior prom. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions?
Nope, you answered all my questions, Dr. Collier, so I'm good.
Okay. If I could just plug SNAP for a second. SNAP is holding a series of dress boutiques, the first of which starts this weekend on Saturday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. right here in the high school. Information comes out in our high school headlines each week, but there's a series of dates. Prom dresses, gently used and new prom dresses are available at a very reduced price, so we'll make sure everybody is aware of those opportunities to get that.
And just for those who don't know what SNAP stands for.
Students Need an Alternative Party is what SNAP stands for. We've been able to partner with SNAP for a number of years. They have provided a post-prom event for our students, a great alternative here at the high school. It'll be at a different venue this year. It'll be at Arnold's Family Fun Center. Again, more information to come on that. That event will be after the senior prom in May.
Thank you, and thank you for that plug for SNAP too, because it's a very valuable program. So, and with not having had access to it for a while, I think we want to make sure it gets on people's radar. So, would you be able to pretty much make what you said available on like our website and things, so that parents were not able to be here and they have questions about the prom before they purchase their dresses and tickets and things, they can
Yes.
reference that? Thank you.
So what we do is each year, I say that, each year, traditionally, let me drop the cup, hang on. Traditionally, we do have space on our website that will have all prom-related documents, so that'll get populated very soon, and then it'll also go out in our high school headlines, but it'll also be on the website, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. On the headlines, I just would like to give you a plug for that, because that is information specific. Anybody who doesn't know, that's information that's specific for high schoolers, and I love how you streamline that and have that all in one place. So thank you for that. Keep that going, please.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rizzo?
Yeah, I just want to take a moment and continue the tradition of honoring our retirees. I have a list of 17 that I would like to honor this evening, thanking them for their years of service with Spring-Ford. These 17 retirees represent a significant contribution to public education and to our Spring-Ford community. Collectively, they have accrued 430 years of service at Spring-Ford and 451 total in public education. First, David Caldwell, health and phys ed teacher at the 9th grade center with 34 years of service. Elizabeth Comport, reading teacher at the 8th grade center, 22 years of service at Spring-Ford, 35 in education. Elizabeth Kroll, science teacher at the 7th grade center, 19 years of service with 23, 19 in Spring-Ford with 23 collectively in education. Rachel Custer, social studies teacher at the 7th grade center with 24 years of service here at Spring-Ford. Judy Denning, instructional assistant at Brook, 8 years of service at Spring-Ford, 11 in education in total. Ann Dieter, special education teacher at Limerick and now Spring-Ford Cyber Learning with 29 years of service at Spring-Ford. Ingrid Huss, German teacher at the senior high, 9 through 12, with 35 years of service at Spring-Ford. Monica Johnner, elementary teacher at Spring City Elementary, 24 years of service. Paula Love, Spanish teacher at the 10 through 12, with 32 years of service at Spring-Ford. Karen Lyons, food services at Upper Providence, with 15 years of service here at Spring-Ford. Nancy McDonough, special education teacher in the 9th grade center with 31 years of service. Eileen McGrory, elementary teacher at Evans with 21 years of service. Jim Mercer, mathematics teacher at the 8th grade center with 35 years of service. Ron Moser, custodian at Royersford, 19 years of service. Pat Stroop, special education teacher at Limerick with 26 years of service. Susan Teeter, instructional assistant at the 5-6 with 20 years of service. And lastly, Dr. Tina Weidenbaugh with 36 years of service at Springford and a 37th of 1 year as a long-term sub here at Springford. 17 exceptional individuals with collectively 451 years, almost 5 centuries in public education. So thank you all for your service. We wish you the best. Sad for us, happy for you.
Thank you, Mr. Rizzo. It's so heartwarming to read about all of those teachers, some of whom I worked with, who I know are wonderful individuals, and it's bittersweet because I'm very happy for them as well. So, all right, if there are no other comments or questions from the board, then we'll move on to the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, I did not check with Mr. Fitzgerald.
I have no report this evening.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the agenda, to the minutes, for the board approval for the minutes there. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any questions or comments before that? I apologize. Thank you very much, Mrs. Zasowski, is keeping me in line here. Appreciate it. Then that motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to personnel A through P. Is there a motion? A second? Second. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Let's see, on to finance. So finance A through N, but we're going to hold on K.
Just separate.
Mr. Jackson, would you like to speak to that?
I'm just going to separate K because there hasn't been an approval for that.
I also want to separate H.
Separating K and H. Okay.
And G.
And G. So we're voting on finance A through N, separated out as K, H, G. Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. That motion passes. All right, taking a look at, do we need to discuss K further, or just the fact that we're holding on to that for now?
No, since it hasn't been approved, we can't approve something that hasn't been approved, so we can bring it back in February.
Is that for all three?
No, that's just for K. So take a look at H next. Any discussion on H?
G.
I would start with G.
G, oh, I'm sorry.
Because they're connected.
So on G, so do we start with questions or do we go with, is there a motion?
I would go, let's put the motion on the table, and then there could be questions, unless there's an issue with it being on the table as an action item. But if not, we can put it on the table and then discuss.
Okay, is there a motion for G?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
Just want the board to understand that sometimes this gets lost in the presentation, so I want each board member to understand this is what you're approving right now, $186,519,705. I just want to make sure you understand that's what you're preliminary approving right now. In the past, we've heard comments that, well, I didn't know that I was approving that, so I just want to be real clear. This is what's being approved tonight, preliminary, as the first step. Okay.
Can we get an explanation for the community as to what the preliminary general fund budget means? What that is actually? Would you like to do that, or Mr. Fink?
it's primarily the first step as we go through the approval process, which starts tonight, and we go down to approval in May. So there are 4 different, I think it's 4 different, 5.
There's 3 different levels, Mr. Jackson, so that's accurate. It's part of Act 1, which discusses a timeline for which a school budget has to go through. The first step is the proposed preliminary budget, which is more of a check mark. It has to be done, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Fitzgerald, I think it's 120 days before the primary date.
That is correct.
So that would come up, the way our meetings fall would have to be done tonight to meet our time schedule. From here on out, we're doing our deep dive into actually scrubbing the budgets, doing building budgets, and building all that up. We will then present, we'll be discussing this at at finance. Sorry, Mr. Jackson, I got confused with the best committee out there. But we'll be discussing this at finance throughout. In April, we will present the proposed final budget for a vote on the final budget at the end of May.
Thank you very much. Any other questions on G? All right. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion is moved. Looking at then H. Is there a motion for H? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Questions or comments?
I know I asked Mr. Fink last week to elaborate on this. You want to follow up with that again for how this relates to what you just shared with us about the preliminary budget?
Certainly. The Act 1 also gives a provision for what we call referendum exceptions, which allows the school board to increase, if it so needs or wishes to, above the Act 1 index, which this year is 3.4%. Our calculations preliminary would allow for about another 0.5% if needed. And it's basically to help with costs that increase quicker than the Act 1 index. Special ed is a big area there, as those expenditures normally increase at a faster rate than inflation.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments regarding H? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Was Mrs. Zasowski? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to property. We have property A through D. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Any questions or comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Moving on to programming and curriculum, A and B. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passes. Moving on to conferences and workshops, A through D. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Moving on to other business. So in other business, we're looking at voting on sections A and C. Section B does not require an action on it, and we are separating out D. So we are
So voting on E, so A, C, and E, right?
no other business. Oh, are we voting on that? I thought it was discussion. We're voting on E? Okay, so we are
A, C, and E.
voting on A, C, and E.
So moved. Or you have, sorry.
Do we have,
Sorry.
is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Questions or comments?
Can you just clarify, A, C, and E is what we're voting on? Okay.
A, C, and E. Okay. So we actually, on E, I did want to, Andrew was going to talk to us. I'm sorry, what?
Aaron is back there with the...
Oh, Andrew. Andrew is, I'm working on the names. Thank you. He's going to talk to us a little bit about.
Madam President, can we go back? I think you skipped. You were to ask if there were any questions, and I have a question on item 10.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Did I
okay.
not? So questions and comments on other business, sections A, C, or E?
Item 10, I'd like to separate item 10.
Is that the anti-nepotism policy?
Yes.
Okay.
No, he's looking at. Oh, I beg your pardon. Okay, there, I see it there. So we're separating out A10. So we are voting on sections A, C, and E, separating out A10.
Separating E also, please.
Separate E also. All right, so now we are voting on A and C, but separating out from A, A10. So A 1 through 9 and section C 1 through 6. Is there a motion? A second? Questions and comments?
Item 10, I think we voted on this twice. The anti-nepotism policy was put in place for a reason. And after my 9 years of being on the board, it was put in place for a reason because we had people with the same last name, looked alike, that worked at Spring-Ford, and I'm sure that had nothing to do with qualifications. Now it seems like we're opening that door again. And it concerns me because it was there for a reason. We had issues with that, and that's why that was put in place. So when I look at the anti-nepotism policy, and then I look at hiring within an employer within the district, if you're a school board member, my nephew could not apply for a job here. Okay? But under the anti-nepotism policy, there seems to be a conflict between the two. Anti-nepotism, our position here, as long as there's not a supervisory level or they're not within the same building. But that was one of our issues before, and that's why we ended up creating the nepotism policy.
Can I ask for a point of clarification on the motion on the table to vote on? We separated out this policy?
We've already voted. We didn't?
No.
No, we should be,
didn't vote.
we are way out of turn here. I think we should have been voting.
Yeah,
Right.
we've separated 10 out, so 10 won't be considered in this motion. I think we should vote on what is not at issue, and then we can go back and put on the table 10.
Okay, thank you. So we are voting on A, 1 through 9, and C, 1 through 6. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. So now we are looking at what we separated out. The first one would be A10, which is the nepotism policy.
Correct. I don't know if I need to repeat myself.
I'm sorry, wait a minute. I think I need to ask, is there a motion on A10?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay. discussion and questions? Thank you very much. Discussion.
As I previously stated, it was there for a reason. People had the same last name, they looked alike, nothing to do with qualifications. Now we're opening this door again, and it concerns me that now our way around this is, my words, that there's no direct connect within the building, or there's not a supervisory level. And it just concerns me that we're opening this door for a particular person or reason, and it just concerns me because the original policy there was there for that reason, to avoid nepotism. And I think we're opening the door all over again to do that. Thank you.
So I think there was a reason that it had been brought up, what had to do with we were struggling with hiring as it is, and to provide that opportunity. Someone on the policy committee, Mrs. Earl, do you have anything you wanted to add about it?
That's true. I mean, but, you know, we also are encountering the fact that if someone runs for school board and they have 3 relatives that are already teachers in the district, what, are we going to fire them? So there has to be some common sense here, and we have to be a little bit of self-policing on what our school board members are doing. And I think if it would be, you know, clearly obvious if somebody's pulling rank and saying, yeah, you know, promote my wife or my cousin or things like that. So you have to use a little bit of common sense on this. And this did go through legal. So that's...
I can appreciate it going through legal. That's not my issue, and it's not...
I understand. Mr. Rizzo, do you have anything to add to that?
Or Mr. Fitzgerald, anything?
We wrote the original policy. We revised this. Ultimately, when it comes to, it's a harsh term, but the anti-nepotism policies, it's really a local decision as to what you want to pursue. And we see from time to time the more restrictive policies that is currently in place, but we also see the policies that would be proposed, which allow for exceptions if we're frankly bringing forward the most highly qualified individual and there would not be concern surrounding somebody reporting to a family member. So ultimately it is a local decision at this point as to whether to pursue the modifications, but they check out from a legal perspective.
Mr. Rizzo, did you have any comment?
Well, I would just simply say, again, for 2 reasons. One, we are working through some hiring things, and it does give us a little flexibility still with board oversight. And 2, we are still committed to hiring the most, excellent people. And depending upon how that plays out, it might need to come before the board and think if there would be some sort of relationship, but there are some caveats in place to protect any type of nepotistic action. So, again, I shared kind of like where we were and where we need to go with this in terms of providing a little more flexibility. So at this point, if the board supports it, that helps us out in terms of our hiring. But again, there is board oversight to avoid some of the concerns that Mr. Jackson brought up that occurred a decade or so ago.
And I think it should also be noted that this policy, even in its revised state, does not otherwise modify the State Ethics Act or the school code, which has specific provisions in it for elected officials and decision-making administrators as relates to individuals being brought forward. So those protections under state law continue to exist.
Thank you. And Mr. Jackson, thank you for providing the historical context for that policy. All right, any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The motion passes. All right, now we are moving on to Section D. So Section D, which is the administration recommends approval of the 2022-2023 school calendar. I think we'd like to request that the administration would like to request that this be tabled for until the next meeting. Would you like to discuss that, Mr. Rizzo?
My thinking was that there'd be a motion to have a discussion about this so we can talk about where we are with the work and why I would like to table it.
Make a motion that we table this.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
On a tabling motion, we'll just vote on it. There's no discussion
All
on
right.
that.
All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Does that get us through? E, I apologize. So we're looking at E. Is there a motion? Thank you.
So moved.
Second. Questions or comments regarding this? And I think I'd like to bring forth, the first question or comment is to ask Andrew to demonstrate for us or show for us how we would do the Zoom meetings that would be different committee meetings than they are now.
Hello, everybody. So this device is just called a Meeting Owl. Basically what it is a speaker, a microphone, and a camera. We would place it on the table, and essentially this would run the entire meeting. One person, probably the cabinet member who is running the committee meeting, would plug this into their laptop via USB. It would recognize it in Zoom, and you can proceed with your meeting, and this is a 360 camera, so it will move the camera to whomever is speaking. It's a very simple solution, good quality, good audio, and people can join via Zoom virtually.
So Andrew, is that what you had on at the board retreat when I wasn't able to attend, and Dr. Murray did the, I guess we'll say, video and sound check, because you moved around the room. Can you hear me? Can you see me? And it worked really well.
Yep, so this is the
and
same
that was
device that you guys had
Okay.
used last Saturday.
Yep, thank you.
And just to be clear, the meetings would not be recorded. They would just be able to, and people could access them online.
That's correct. They would only join a committee meeting the same way they would join a board meeting. It'd be the same number every single time, and that would be posted on our website that people could go, and also on the committee agendas.
Any questions for Andrew?
I have no questions for Mr. Andrew. My position has nothing to do with technology. We've been doing Zoom for 2 years now, almost 2 years. And from the board committee perspective, and looking at the meetings I've chaired, we don't have participation on Zoom. We've had meetings where there was not a person on Zoom. And from a technological perspective, Mr. Andrew, that has to be set up, and then someone from your staff is still there.
Nobody from my staff will need to be there for the meeting. It would be placed wherever the meeting is, and then would be used, just plug it in, and they're good to go.
So if there's an issue with the aisle, then what?
What's that?
If there's an issue with the operationability of the aisle, who addresses that?
They could reach out to me at the time, and I'd be more than happy to walk them through the process.
My issue is that we don't have the participation from the community. And initially we had staff there that did all of this, and we just had no participation from the community, very limited. I remember we had 3 months, and I think we had 5 people over a 3-month period. And the questions were basically the same questions. So my concern just is we're keeping IT, that staff here, the entire day. The same way we keep the staff, the cabinet back there, they don't participate. So why don't we just put the whole meeting on Zoom? That way they can go home and there are no issues with it. Because I just don't see the point of having, we have Zoom, we have all the staff sitting here. They could be home like Nurse Smith answer any questions that come up. We have 2 assistant superintendents here. You know, just look at it from the perspective of what makes sense. We're gonna do both, Zoom and have people sit here for 3 and 4 hours and then never get a question. So my concern is just the use of our staff. Is it appropriate the way we're using the staff? And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. And the motion passes.
So for the record, I will attend all meetings from Zoom going forward. Okay.
You have that prerogative, but we would miss you at the most important meetings in the district. All right, I believe that is the end of our voting. The informational item. So there's an informational item there that effective January 1st, 2022, the IRS mileage rate will be 58.5 cents per mile, which is an increase from the 2021 rate of 56 cents per mile. So there's no voting on that, correct? Just for our information. Then we move on to board comment.
Yeah, I'd like to know when we're going to discuss the school calendar.
Good, because I was about ready to jump in. So I'm just going to, since it's not really a discussion, just kind of share where we are and why we asked for it to be tabled. First of all, I do have 3 versions. I shared with them in the board memo that we have 3 versions, all of which have the Eid holiday and Diwali on there, as we had talked about last week. The reason why I'm asking for this is because I did reach out to the association, I did reach out to our administration, and as we were having discussions about this, we all felt like it might be rushed to just add something to our calendar without having a really engaging discussion to get feedback about, is this the time to do a revamp of what we normally do to better support instruction and what we want to do. So there are things that we do that we might no longer feel are necessary. The 3 versions, the consistencies, Eid al-Fitr is still on there. Columbus Day on those 3 options is not, but it can be. Again, it's still a holiday, and do we want to observe it? Diwali is on there. November conferences, we take that week of Thanksgiving. Is that something we want to take a look at? Winter break, how many days we want to allocate for that? Snow days, do we want to add those back in? The last day of school, how late do we want to go into June, knowing that a lot of our standardized assessments are happening in May, and when you get into June, you miss some of that instructional time. So there are things, considerations, do we want to look at election days? We closed down a significant portion of our buildings to have voting polls. Do we want to continue to do that? Do we have flexibility to make those virtual days using our flexible instructional days so we can have that be instruction time? There was discussion at some point about whether we bring Veterans Day in. How do we use our FIDs to better support our students? Flexible days, Act 80 days. There's a lot of questions, maybe more questions than we were ready to answer within a week. So this, tabling the discussion has nothing really, in my opinion, to do with the addition of the holidays. It really is more of a, let's take this time, let's take this month to do a much deeper dive into our school calendar to decide what is most appropriate to help support and advance learning here at Spring-Ford, as we move forward into, with a new superintendent, with a new staff, and maybe there are some new things we can do. That's all.
I spent a lot of time looking at this, mainly at my own stupidity of not looking at the board memo before I printed out your calendar. So I was trying to figure out what we're adding and what we're subtracting. But to me, option 3, makes the most sense because you've basically shortening, you're taking out holidays so starting winter break on a Friday instead, which is the 23rd of December, and instead of just Monday, even the holidays over the weekend. Who's going to notice a Friday? So many of these that, I think on this 3rd option, you've removed 4 days and added 2. So then the school year can end 2 days earlier, which who doesn't love that? Because it seems like every time we add something that adds a day to the end of the school year, it's all a lot of whining and crying about, no, nobody pays attention at the end of the school year anyway. So I would be totally in favor of shortening that, and the Thanksgiving holiday, just taking that Wednesday off. And again, I mean, the real world doesn't get Wednesday off. A lot of them get Friday, but it's usually just Thursday and Friday.
This was tabled.
I had a question about Eid because we had put it on a previous version that it was going to be on the 21st of April, but your note says that it starts after sundown.
Right, and again, thank you for your points, and I will be asking the school board for feedback at some point as far as just as another stakeholder group that has a vested interest in doing what's best for our students. I think you bring up a good point. I do want to hit this before I kind of end this portion. The way we observe at this point Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, the two Jewish holidays that we observe, is it's the evening the night before, and then it's the next day. So if that falls over a weekend, while we have a commitment as a district to observe those holidays, if it falls over a weekend, then we do not observe it for that school year because it's on a Saturday or a Sunday. If we're going to stick with that model, which again is more discussion, then next year Eid al-Fitr would be a Friday night to a Saturday night, which means for the next year's school calendar, we would not observe it on April 21st because the day is Saturday, April 22nd. That changes the next year. It's different this year. So the years that it would be observed during a school day, we would be off that day. And the years that it doesn't, we would not, just in kind with what we've done with Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah.
I just want to note, due to the fact that we had those changes with the Sunshine Act, this is becoming more of a substantive discussion instead of comment. And because we tabled the motion, typically if this were last year and the changes hadn't occurred, I'd be okay with it. But I think people may have left the building, if you would, with the idea that we weren't going to have any more substantive discussion on it. So I would caution any more. I mean, the comments are certainly fine, but then it's kind of getting into a bigger discussion.
Thanks. Just wanted to share.
No, that's certainly fine.
So when do we talk about it?
That's, I was going to ask how much time, because I know that the community has spent a lot of time with us in these meetings and with us in email, especially tonight, expecting a vote. So do you expect on the 22nd or the 28th that we would be ready to do that?
Yes, next month.
Well, how are we going to talk about it, though? When, where are we?
Well, I would anticipate that there would be an action item for the work session where there'll be substantive discussion on it, and then to the extent there needs to be more, there would be more on the voting meeting at the second meeting in February. So there will be at least those two opportunities.
And that still keeps us at a little bit, I would say, ahead of schedule. Mr. Rizzo, isn't it usually about March when we come out with the?
We like to approve in January. We're okay approving in February. You don't want to get too much later because people do make plans. So we want to make sure that they have it approved so they can make plans.
All right, so this would be on the agenda for the next work session. At that time, I think we had asked before, and the same thing, that you would have, like two different options or something, that, and that we would have a chance to look at it. I think Mr. Jackson had asked that before, and then we would be able to discuss it at that time, and with the anticipation of voting on it at the voting meeting, unless we needed additional time. So that's what the timeline would look like, okay?
And could I also ask that we confirm that that our understanding of when the holiday is observed and begins for the Muslim community, that we are applying that appropriately? Thank you.
All right. Any other board comment?
Yes, I have a question. The student reps, why are they leaving? I'm asking, why are they leaving at 9:30? Is it because it's midterms or not? Because I've seen that happen in the last several weeks.
It's been going on for a while.
And I just question it because
Are you jealous?
I am a little bit. I am a little bit. But we've had student reps who have sat here through the thick of it and the worst of it. And I have signed papers so that they wouldn't get pulled over. I don't necessarily agree that they should be here for hours on end. But we're not even at 10 o'clock. So I guess I'm just questioning maybe the level of commitment. There's a lot of kids that want to do that. I think they're great what they provide, the insights, the comments, et cetera. I'm just asking.
I think we could probably do a better job of bringing them in, making them feel that they're not done at the beginning. Maybe it's just we can give a little, take a little.
Ms. Crew.
Well, there's a very detailed process that occurred for you to be selected for those two seats. We went into great detail what was involved from a time commitment. So none of this is new, and as Ms. Colleen mentioned. Sorry.
It's a tricky name.
The previous student reps, they were in this to the end. And I like both of them, but yeah, I mean,
It just takes a conversation, I think.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I was
mean,
going to say,
I wouldn't read into it.
I think this is a good question and observation, but I do feel a bit uncomfortable talking about people who sit at this board without them being able to be present and share their explanation. So I think just like we wouldn't talk about personnel, it's probably something to take offline.
Thank you.
Could this be a private conversation? Perhaps Dr. Wright could?
Yeah, I think
with
I agree that we do want to address it, but this would not necessarily be the time. But Ms. Crew, did you have a comment that you wanted to make regarding this?
One of the students was under a junior driver's license and had indicated at the start of the year that they would need to leave earlier. The other one, I believe, leaves at the same time per her family request. This was all discussed earlier in the year with Dr. Collier.
Thank you.
I'm fine with it. I just wanted to understand it. And I don't want to talk about our student reps with them not here, but we also didn't have any flexibility in the meeting earlier to even ask about it or to raise it as an issue, because it would fall at the end under board comment to ask about it. But and that's fine. I just wanted to know what that was about.
Thank you for bringing it up. Any other board comment or questions?
I have a couple items. Last week I mentioned that as much as I like Mr. Schaefer, I think we need to look at having greater spacing. We make the audience sit apart from each other, but we sit here right on top of each other. Committee meetings, the same thing. So I'm just bringing it up again, that we need to look at applying what we say and vote on a consistent basis. Thank you.
Is the rest of the board agree that we would like to have more spacing while up here? We have done that in the past. Any other comments or concerns about that?
I just want to make sure it's not a personal hygiene issue with it. I mean, okay, then I'd be fine with more separation.
Yeah, it's 3 feet is the.
Which is what it is, nose to nose.
All right, Mr. Rizzo?
It is 3 feet nose to nose for students. And, listen, for me, my nose is here, but I got a lot on either side of my nose, right? So it looks like we're closer, but if we want to go to 6 feet, there will be some spacing issues in terms of getting everything on the camera for Zoom. That's all. We'd have to work through what that looks like.
Mr. Jackson, are you looking for 6 feet or just more in general?
I'm looking for consistency. Whatever we're asked the other members of our school district to do, we should do. So if it's 3 feet, it's 3 feet. If it's 6 feet, it should be 6 feet.
I'm in complete agreement. And if it's 3 feet, my understanding is, right, so with both people wearing masks, so if we can just make sure that we are 3 feet apart.
You got it.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson, any other questions?
No. Thank you.
Any other board member questions or concerns? Comments? All right. With that, we would move to public to be heard. We would start with anyone on Zoom, since at the beginning of the meeting we did in person. So, Aaron, is there anyone on Zoom?
Yes, there is.
All right. Thank you.
Kremls@hotmail.com. You may now make a public comment. Please unmute yourself, then state your first and last name as well as your full address.
Anderson from Upper Providence Township, Collegeville. It would appear, oh, I'm so sorry. I think I'm starting on the wrong page. I want to begin by stating taxpayers are stakeholders. So my expectation as a taxpayer is the applicant consideration should be focused on the best candidate always, who we have applying. I did that in my career and I ended up with a diverse staff based on just going for the best candidate. Also, recently after closure for a few days at the 567 building, I noticed many on social media asking, where are all the subs? I began subbing in March 2021 in response to two things. One, a known shortage of substitute teachers nationwide, and two, to do my part in helping to keep our kids in school. With that said, many of us sub at a lower rate of pay than we earned in our previous careers because we have young children and need flexibility in our lives at this point. I would encourage the board and administration to take a close look at the daily rate paid to subs who do not receive any benefits to supplement the daily rate. Given that substitute teachers have been serving our community during this pandemic and are often actually teaching the students all day, the same as the absent teacher, it would be wonderful if this topic could be added to your discussions. Increasing the daily sub rate offered may help in our district, may help increase the number of subs available in our district, which is needed at this time. Just to give a little added information on that, a building sub makes about $150 a day. I've paid a teenage babysitter $20 an hour. Many people have if you have 2 or 3 kids, so we make about the same. In closing, there have been many developments in surrounding counties, school districts, and even the CDC, which seems to warrant a new discussion of our health and safety plan. Apparently, Chester County residents do not have to endure contact tracing or quarantine anymore, which affects one of our buildings, Spring City. It would appear this needs to be addressed, kind of a conundrum with one school in our district having Chester County residents versus Montgomery County. So it seems our students may require different treatment. I also mentioned a few months ago about the very low effectiveness of masking, especially of cloth masks like Old Navy, which so many students and staff are wearing. It seems this new development warrants some board discussions about the cloth masks. The most recent development all over the headlines currently is a New York State Supreme Court judge in Nassau County voted today that Governor Kathy Hochul's mask mandate, including for schools, is unconstitutional. The tide is turning all around us, and the health and safety plan needs to be revisited, and preferably before February 22nd meeting. Thank you for your time.
Addison, you may now make a public comment. Please unmute yourself, then state your first and last name, as well as your full address. I apologize. It appears Addison is using an older version of Zoom and is unable to speak. That would mean at this time there are no further public comments to be heard on Zoom.
Any comment, public comment from the room? Please state your name, your address. Thank you.
Diana Kirsch, 265 Old State Road, Royersford. Speaking on agenda item 2A, number 1, first of all, I didn't hear anyone asking for any data. All right, I'm a little confused as to why no one's asking for data to back up some of these recommendations. So that's sort of where my next few points are based off of. So my first question would be, where's the data provided to show what is not happening, which created the recommendations in the EDI proposal? Second point or question is, I'm not sure the parent committee was made very public or to made known to many people. I certainly hadn't heard of it. And if we think a dozen parents is enough people to be, weighing in on that, that's just nowhere near enough. My third comment is, where's the data to support that a student needs a teacher that looks like them to be successful? I'd like to see that data. Next one is, how is this sustainable? Who's going to support all the different clubs that are being proposed that would theoretically meet all the needs of every possible student, cultural background, or other backgrounds, or other things that they identify with? Who's going to support all that? Is it sustainable? And these are the kinds of questions that need to be asked before just sort of carte blanching, having every possible club, every possible program. Is it sustainable? Next question is, where's the data showing that catering to each and every child's individual situation truly benefits them in the whole span of their life? I'd like to see that data. And my last question is, everybody remembers anti-bullying campaigns. It started probably a decade, maybe more ago. Where's the data on the anti-bullying campaigns? Because a lot of this sounds similar to that, right? Did those anti-bullying campaigns reduce bullying? Because if they did, I don't know that we'd be having some of the conversations we're having now, where some of these students are still allegedly saying they're being bullied like this. So I'd like to see some of the data on that. I think that I should say, I'd like to see some of the data. I don't know if the parents are going to get this kind of information before these decisions are made, but hopefully as a board, you would like to see that kind of information before any kind of plan is permanently put into place. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name, address, and then that's it. Name and address. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kaji Atahar. I am a resident of 5 Westminster Court, Collegeville, 19426. I'm here to talk about the school calendar discussion. First of all, I would like to sincerely thank the board for listening to our voice and seriously considering adding the Eid holiday on the calendar. At the same time, I'm speaking on behalf of the whole community that we totally understand that this is a significant change in the right direction, but because it's a significant change, of course the board will have to discuss and think about how to actually operationalize this. At any time, if you have any question, please feel free to reach us and we will provide the information. One quick clarification is you are right about the dating or how the holiday is observed. It's from the sundown to the next day. However, the dates that we have provided in our proposal in the written document, it lists the recognized days for the next 4 or 5 years. And this year it will fall on a Friday. The recognition will be on the Friday. So again, please take your time and we are here to assist you in any way you need. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? Please state your name and address. Thank you.
Steve Fry, Royersford, PA. Talk about agenda item 2A. As mentioned before the meeting, I think today's EDI presentation should be based on, or the success of it should be based on the commitment of having all the facts all the time about the school, and that's the board commitment to the public. And I don't think today quite made that commitment, didn't meet that commitment. There were a lot of things left out. I think the previous speaker made some good points about some of the things we don't currently understand. There were a lot of other questions that I personally have had for a while that certainly did not get addressed, and I'm not going to have a chance to go through all of them, but just to give you some examples. I didn't see any, and again, some of this goes back to my review of some of the project documents I received. I didn't really see a meaningful evaluation of the underlying concepts of the program before starting. It just kind of jumped ahead to implementation. It just seemed like that again today. The definition of the words, again, a lot of vague definitions. I don't see how you operationalize something based on words that are just so vaguely defined as to be, again, I don't know how you can possibly operationalize something based on those definitions. Why did the project need the immediate authority of a policy? There's a difference between having management support for a project versus giving it the authority of a policy. I don't quite understand why you would go that extra mile to give it that authority without having really proven anything yet. Or quite frankly, I've never seen a project ever require, outside of EDI, I've never seen a project require a policy at all. There's been no discussion of the underlying Marxist influences of EDI programs and how that fits into the overall picture. I read one of the books associated with the EDI policy. I would have named the book, How to Operationalize Marxism in a School. There's a chapter which I would call Struggle Sessions in Schools. Again, we're not really talking about that, and I think that's a significant issue. What else we have? Have we heard about any external incentives or pressures for having an EDI program? No, haven't heard anything about that. We know sometimes those exist. What else? Previous board meeting, the last time we had an EDI presentation, some of the board members said they wanted to hold back on sharing project information until there was an infrastructure or system in place to report issues and make sure they got addressed. I saw no mention of that today. I don't know where that expectation came from or if that still exists. And there seems to be this kind of variability in what gets applied for diversity. I've seen lists in various documents that contain like 10 or 12 aspects of diversity. In today's presentation, sometimes they're down to 3. Don't understand kind of the difference
Thank you. We're at
between
3
when certain
minutes.
things are going to be applied and when not. So, thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address. Thank you.
Mary Jo McNamara, Limerick, Pennsylvania. So my first order would be to ask the board at some point to clarify whether or not we actually need to speak our address or our township. We've gone back and forth a couple of times. Let's get clarification. I have some concerns about the 96-page agenda for tonight and things that we spent time on and things that we didn't. So with regard to the EDI piece of this and the presentation, a lot of the stuff that we talked about was culture shift and understanding culture, and the word culture came up a lot, right? So I'm really concerned that we just retired a policy with regard to exit interviewing. So we had 21 resignations that represented some hundreds of years of experience, and I'm not really sure why we're rescinding a policy about exit interviews, and we're not collecting data about that, especially if we want to understand things about culture and culture shift. I think the board was irresponsible by not adding, everybody knows that the words out in the CDC changes and the guidelines and the legal implications of those things that have happened in the past 2 weeks. I think it was really irresponsible of the board by not adding an agenda item or something to at least discuss. We had new business about Zoom, but we don't have business about masking, guidelines related to distancing, contact tracing, and quarantining, especially since we have a school in a county where it's not legal any longer. Another thing that concerns me is that you just voted on a $200 million budget where one of your veteran board members actually called it out separately, and not one single person had a question about it. We had a board member asked to have it explained. It was represented to us, I think, in November. We got an overview of it. Nobody's asking questions. We have 3 months to approve a $200 million budget. And then you went and approved the ability to do an exception to that budget, right? So that's concerning. Nobody's doing due diligence there, and we're spending a lot of time talking about addendums to the calendar, which I support, right? But there's important things on here that, especially with our new board members, they may need some guidance and understanding. I think that's it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Hi, Megan Nice, 300 North Limerick Road, Schwenksville. I just wanted to address, as I noticed there wasn't a lot of Zoom comments tonight, the past 2 meetings, the way that the public has been notified of the meetings has changed, and I don't know who makes that policy. We were getting, all during COVID, everyone was getting an email the day of the board meeting, or maybe it was the day before, that said, like, tonight's a board meeting, here's the agenda, here's the Zoom link. That stopped as of last week. What I was told was that it was notified from November till now, somewhere in the weekly updates, that there was a blurb that there would no longer be these emails to let us know there was a board meeting, and that it would be part of the weekly update. I went back December 22nd, January 7th, January 12th, and nowhere in there did it say anything about the fact that we would no longer be getting these individual emails. And even in this past week, on January 19th, weekly update, at the top it says, like, in this issue with bullet points, there was no bullet point to say, board meeting link. Information was in there at the bottom, but there was no indication at the top that that would be somewhere in that meeting. So That may be why not a lot of people are here tonight, especially when we were talking about EDI, which was something that a lot of people were interested in hearing about. So I don't know who makes those decisions, but if it could be made more clear or presented at least at a board meeting to say, like, from now on, we will notify you this way about when a board meeting is going to be. Thank you.
I got a question. Isn't our calendar, and this is for Ms. Nice, I think, doesn't our calendar show board meetings throughout for the year? I'm asking because I'm...
Right, I'd like to have Ms. Crew speak to that, because we communicate meetings in multiple ways. Ms. Crew?
I'm trying to pull up our most recent information. So we do communicate our board meetings in weekly updates. Starting in November, as you had mentioned, notification was sent with the board meetings that did take place in November, that beginning in January of 2022, the day of meetings would no longer be sent. It would be included in weekly updates, which are sent every Wednesday. It's also posted at the website. The day of every board meeting, we have it's called a page pop on the website. It's on the homepage and our school board related pages. We have Facebook events for those who use the social media sites. And we also post legal notices in our local our local newspapers when the calendar's approved, anytime there's a change in location, date, or time, or any additional meeting. So with the addition of the information in weekly update, we're actually going to be communicating that more regularly than just the day of updates. And we do have it on the school board calendar throughout the year with all the committee meetings, as well as a one-page calendar on the website also.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there someone else in the community who'd like to speak? Thank you. Please state your name and address.
There, Ryan Nice, 300 North Limerick Road. Last time we had a school board meeting, I talked and concluded and forwarded you sources of information that suicide for youth 0 to 19 years of age in the state of Pennsylvania, 8 times the killer that COVID-19 is. I'd like to continue with that because suicide actually is not the greatest risk for our youth in Pennsylvania. Actually, injuries are, and when I say injuries, I mean traffic accidents and drownings. So basically, young drivers and swimming pools. Now, there's a strange dichotomy here because we are not filling in our swimming pools with stones, and we are not taking the keys away from our young drivers, but we are asking them to mask, get vaccines, stay home, etc. You may say there's no compromise there, right? Masking is not a big deal. Well, a quick Google search, right? I mean, this is basic information. This is beyond common sense. Would show you that, and for just a couple examples, in Psychology Today, 3 to 8-year-olds have impaired ability to recognize emotions, especially positive emotions, when masked. So the world, in other words, seems like a less friendly place. Also, for the same age group, masks may block something called social referencing, which is a form of social copying and is important for the development of sympathy. So we don't want to raise a generation of sociopaths here. Now, I have an uncomfortable hypothesis for the school board because this bothers me. The fact that, risks of swimming or driving or, are we sending our kids to therapy when they feel depressed? Are we doing those things? And often cases, the answer is no, but we're asking them to sacrifice so much of their school experience when they're not actually at risk. I want to show you something here. Get this on camera. Do you see that tiny, tiny line, the 2 tiny lines to the left? I forwarded this to you. Those are the lines 0 to 19 of who's dying from COVID. You see that big scary line in the middle where the curve starts? That's my age, that's 40. I'm at risk from COVID, you're at risk from COVID. COVID is real, COVID is dangerous, not for our kids. The facts are in, the data is in, look at that. They're not dying from this, but we are sacrificing their social development, their emotional development, and their academic excellence for the rest of their life. So I have an uncomfortable hypothesis about this, and it's something that I think we all need to have the courage to consider. What if we're not asking our kids to mask and vaccinate and stay home for their safety? What if we're asking them to sacrifice their school and their personal development for our safety? What if we're asking them to not come home sick and get us sick because we're worried about our safety? In other words, are we sacrificing our children for a marginal gain in the adults' safety? If there's even a chance that that hypothesis is true, a small hypothesis, then we are traveling dark waters morally, and we have to have the courage to ask ourselves what it is we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the community who would like to speak at this time? If there are no more comments, then we make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.